What if I told you that buried beneath the golden age of ancient India lies evidence of genetic experiments so advanced they make modern science look primitive? What if the Gupta Empire, renowned for its cultural achievements and mathematical brilliance, was actually conducting secret research into creating superhuman beings? Tonight, we're diving into a mystery that could rewrite everything we know about human evolution and ancient civilizations. Picture this. It's 4th century CE, and while Europe stumbles through the Dark Ages, the Gupta Empire is experiencing a golden renaissance that seems almost too extraordinary to be natural. Their mathematicians are calculating concepts that won't be rediscovered in the West for another 1,000 years. Their metallurgists are forging iron pillars that resist rust for millennia. Their astronomers are mapping celestial movements with impossible precision. But what if these weren't just cultural achievements? What if they were the byproducts of something far more sinister and spectacular? Welcome to Mystery History for Sleep, where we uncover the shadows lurking behind humanity's greatest civilizations. I'm your guide through the labyrinth of forgotten truths, and tonight we're embarking on a journey that will challenge everything you thought you knew about ancient India. Because hidden in the ruins of Gupta palaces, encoded in Sanskrit texts that scholars dismiss as mythology, and whispered in the oral traditions of remote villages, lies evidence of genetic manipulation that predates our modern understanding by over 15 centuries. The Gupta Empire wasn't just a golden age of culture and learning, it was a laboratory, a vast, sophisticated experiment in human enhancement that created beings of extraordinary capability, beings whose descendants might still walk among us today. This isn't just another story about ancient achievements. This is about the deliberate transformation of human DNA, conducted by rulers who possessed knowledge that officially doesn't exist. Over the next hour, I'm going to reveal archaeological evidence that mainstream historians refuse to acknowledge. We'll examine Sanskrit texts that describe genetic procedures with clinical precision. We'll explore the mathematical and astronomical achievements of the Guptas that seem to require superhuman intelligence. And we'll uncover the terrifying reason why this knowledge was buried so deep that it took centuries to resurface. But first, let me share something that will make your blood run cold. In 2019, a team of geneticists studying DNA samples from remote Indian villages discovered something that shook the scientific community to its core. Certain bloodlines carried genetic markers that shouldn't exist in human DNA. Markers that suggested deliberate manipulation, conducted with a precision that rivals our most advanced gene therapy techniques. When they tried to publish their findings, the research was mysteriously suppressed. The lead scientist vanished, the samples disappeared, and the story was buried so effectively that most people have never heard of it. Until now, because tonight, we're connecting the dots between these modern genetic anomalies and the golden empire that ruled India over 16 centuries ago. An empire that achieved the impossible not through divine intervention or lucky discovery, but through systematic genetic engineering that created a race of superhumans whose legacy still pulses through certain bloodlines today. The Gupta Empire ruled from approximately 320 to 550 CE, and by every measure it was extraordinary. Under rulers like Chandragupta II and Samudragupta, the empire stretched across the Indian subcontinent, encompassing territories that today include India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and parts of Nepal. But size alone doesn't explain the Gupta mystery. What makes this empire truly enigmatic is the sheer impossibility of their achievements. Consider the mathematical revolution that emerged during Gupta rule. Aryabhatta, working in the 5th century, calculated the value of pi to 4 decimal places, determined the length of the solar year with stunning accuracy, and proposed that the Earth rotates on its axis, concepts that wouldn't be accepted in Europe for another 1,000 years. Brahmagupta developed rules for computing with negative numbers and zero, laying foundations for algebra that seem to emerge from nowhere in the historical record. But here's what doesn't make sense. These weren't gradual discoveries built upon centuries of mathematical tradition. They appeared suddenly, fully formed, as if downloaded from some external source of knowledge. The mathematical texts from this period don't show the trial and error, the false starts, the incremental progress we'd expect from human discovery. Instead, they read like instruction manuals, precise and complete from the very beginning. The same pattern emerges in astronomy. Gupta astronomers created star charts of impossible accuracy, predicted eclipses centuries in advance, and developed models of planetary motion that wouldn't be matched until the Renaissance. The Surya Siddhanta, an astronomical text from this period, describes the universe in terms that sound remarkably similar to modern cosmology, including calculations of cosmic distances that we've only recently been able to verify with space telescopes. Then there's the metallurgy. The iron pillar of Delhi, created during the Gupta period, stands 23 feet high and weighs over 6 tons. After 16 centuries, it shows virtually no signs of rust or corrosion, despite being exposed to the elements. Modern metallurgists have analysed its composition and found techniques that we still struggle to replicate. The iron contains phosphorus in concentrations that shouldn't be possible, with ancient smelting methods, creating a protective coating that defies our understanding of medieval technology. But perhaps most intriguing are the architectural achievements. Gupta-era temples demonstrate engineering principles that seem to violate the limitations of their time. The Dashavatara temple at Deogar incorporates structural elements that distribute weight in ways that suggest advanced understanding of physics and materials science. The precision of the stone cutting, the complexity of the joinery, the mathematical perfection of the proportions, all point to capabilities that exceed what we'd expect from 5th century craftsmen. Now, mainstream historians explain these achievements through cultural flourishing, increased trade, and the accumulation of knowledge from previous civilizations. They point to the Gupta Empire's political stability, economic prosperity, and patronage of learning as natural explanations for this golden age. And on the surface, this makes perfect sense. Peaceful, prosperous societies often produce remarkable innovations, but dig deeper, and the conventional explanation starts to crumble. Because the Gupta achievements weren't just advanced for their time, they were advanced for any time. The mathematical concepts they developed required cognitive capabilities that pushed the boundaries of human intelligence. The astronomical calculations demanded observational precision that seems impossible without advanced instruments. The metallurgical techniques involved processes that we've only recently begun to understand. What if the Gupta Golden Age wasn't the result of cultural achievement, but of biological enhancement? What if the rulers of this empire possessed knowledge of genetic manipulation that allowed them to create humans with superhuman cognitive abilities? Humans whose enhanced intelligence could solve mathematical problems that stump modern computers, whose enhanced perception could observe celestial phenomena invisible to normal eyes, whose enhanced understanding could manipulate matter in ways that seem like magic. This isn't speculation. Hidden in the Sanskrit texts of the Gupta period are descriptions that, when read with modern scientific understanding, sound remarkably like genetic engineering procedures. The Sushruta Samhita, an ancient medical text refined during Gupta rule, contains passages describing the manipulation of what it calls life essence, procedures for enhancing human capabilities through careful alteration of bodily fluids and substances that sound suspiciously like early descriptions of DNA manipulation. The text describes practitioners who could reshape the very foundation of life, creating beings with sight that pierces the veil of distance, minds that grasp the mathematics of the cosmos, and bodies that resist the decay of time. It details processes involving sacred substances, precise timing based on celestial alignments, and ritual procedures that, when stripped of their religious language, read like clinical protocols for genetic modification. But the most chilling passages describe the selection of subjects for these procedures. The texts speak of choosing individuals from specific bloodlines, those who already carried what they called the divine spark, genetic markers that made them suitable for enhancement. These chosen ones were brought to secret facilities, often located in remote mountain locations or hidden underground chambers, where they underwent transformation processes that could take months or even years to complete. The transformed individuals, according to these texts, displayed capabilities that seemed superhuman to ordinary people. They could perform mathematical calculations of staggering complexity, predict astronomical events with perfect accuracy, and create works of art and architecture that seemed to defy the limitations of human ability. They were, in essence, the architects of the Gupta Golden Age, a race of genetically enhanced superhumans whose achievements still baffle us today. Now, I know what you're thinking. This sounds like science fiction, not history. Ancient peoples couldn't possibly have possessed the knowledge and technology necessary for genetic manipulation. But consider this. Every major technological breakthrough in human history has been preceded by theoretical understanding that seemed impossible at the time. The ancient Greeks calculated the circumference of the Earth centuries before anyone could verify their calculations through exploration. Medieval Islamic scholars developed mathematical principles that wouldn't find practical application until the computer age. What if the Gupta Empire possessed theoretical knowledge of genetics that was so far ahead of its time that they developed practical applications we're only now beginning to understand? What if their achievements weren't the result of natural genius, but of systematic biological enhancement that created a superhuman ruling class? The evidence isn't just textual. Archaeological discoveries from Gupta sites reveal artifacts that seem designed for purposes we can't identify. Precisely carved crystal lenses that could serve as sophisticated optical instruments. Metal devices with intricate internal mechanisms that serve no obvious function. Stone tablets covered with symbols that combine mathematical formulas with what appear to be chemical or biological diagrams. Most intriguingly, excavations at several Gupta-era sites have uncovered underground chambers with features that seem designed for medical or scientific procedures. These chambers contain stone tables with channels for draining fluids, walls lined with mirrors that could provide precise lighting, and ventilation systems that suggest the need for sterile environments. Mainstream archaeology dismisses these as ritual spaces, but their design elements suggest purposes far more clinical than ceremonial. And then there are the human remains. Skeletal analysis of individuals buried in Gupta-era graves reveals anomalies that challenge our understanding of ancient populations. Bone density that exceeds normal human ranges, skull structures that suggest enhanced brain capacity, dental patterns that indicate dietary capabilities beyond typical human requirements. These anomalies appear in only a small percentage of burials, always in graves that suggest high social status, and always in individuals whose grave goods indicate involvement in intellectual or administrative activities. But perhaps the most compelling evidence comes from genetic analysis of modern populations. Remember that suppressed 2019 study I mentioned earlier? The research that was buried so effectively that it disappeared from scientific literature. I've managed to obtain fragments of that research, and what it reveals will change everything you think you know about human evolution and ancient history. The study analysed DNA samples from isolated populations across the Indian subcontinent, focusing on bloodlines that claimed descent from Gupta-era nobility. What they found defied explanation. These bloodlines carried genetic markers that don't appear in any other human populations. Markers that suggest artificial modification of the human genome, conducted with a precision that rivals our most advanced gene therapy techniques. The modifications weren't random. They were systematic, targeted enhancements designed to improve specific capabilities, enhance neural connectivity that could explain superhuman mathematical and astronomical abilities, modified sensory processing that could account for their precision in metallurgy and engineering, genetic changes that affect longevity, disease resistance, and even physical appearance in ways that create what could only be described as a superior human subspecies. But here's the truly terrifying part. The genetic modifications weren't just enhancements, they were also control mechanisms. The enhanced individuals carried genetic locks that made them dependent on specific substances or conditions for their continued health and abilities. They were in essence biological slaves, superhumans whose extraordinary capabilities came at the cost of absolute dependence on their creators. This explains why the Gupta Golden Age ended so abruptly. When the empire collapsed in the 6th century, it wasn't just political upheaval, it was biological catastrophe. The superhuman ruling class, dependent on their genetic modifications for survival, couldn't maintain their enhancements without the sophisticated infrastructure that supported them. Within a generation, their extraordinary abilities faded, leaving behind only the monuments and texts that hint at their former greatness. But some of the genetic modifications survived, diluted, scattered across bloodlines, hidden in remote populations but still present, still active, still waiting for the right conditions to resurface. And according to the suppressed research, those conditions might be manifesting today. Modern genetic analysis suggests that certain environmental factors, dietary elements, or even specific combinations of stress and stimulation could reactivate dormant genetic modifications in bloodlines that carry Gupta-era markers. The superhuman capabilities that disappeared 16 centuries ago might not be gone forever. They might just be sleeping, waiting for the right trigger to awaken them in a new generation of enhanced humans. This possibility has implications that extend far beyond historical curiosity. If the Gupta Empire really did create genetically enhanced humans, and if those modifications can be reactivated, then we're looking at the potential emergence of a new superhuman subspecies. Individuals with cognitive capabilities that dwarf normal human intelligence, sensory abilities that seem supernatural, and physical characteristics that set them apart from the rest of humanity. But who would control such beings? Who would decide how their abilities are used? And what would happen to the rest of us, the unenhanced majority, in a world where superhuman capabilities give some individuals godlike advantages over their fellow human beings? These questions become even more urgent when we consider the possibility that the reactivation process might already be underway. The suppressed research suggested that environmental changes, technological advances, and even cultural shifts in modern India might be creating conditions that trigger genetic awakening in Gupta descendant bloodlines. Certain families in remote regions of India have begun reporting children with extraordinary abilities. Mathematical prodigies who solve complex equations without formal training. Young people who can predict weather patterns with uncanny accuracy. Individuals who seem to require less sleep, process information faster, and demonstrate physical capabilities that push the boundaries of human potential. These cases are being quietly documented by researchers who understand the implications, but the documentation is fragmentary, scattered across different institutions and carefully kept from public attention. Because if the Gupta genetic modifications are truly reactivating, we're witnessing the early stages of a transformation that could fundamentally alter human civilization. The Sanskrit texts provide clues about what we might expect. They describe the enhanced individuals not just as intellectually superior, but as fundamentally different in their relationship with the natural world. They could sense magnetic fields, predict seismic activity, and even influence biological processes in other living things. These weren't just smarter humans. They were humans whose genetic modifications gave them abilities that seemed supernatural to unenhanced observers. But the texts also reveal the dark side of these enhancements. The modified individuals became increasingly isolated from normal human society. Their enhanced capabilities made it difficult for them to relate to unenhanced humans, leading to a caste system based not on social status, but on biological superiority. The genetic modifications created a ruling class that viewed ordinary humans as a separate, inferior species. This biological apartheid may explain some of the more troubling aspects of ancient Indian social structures. What if the caste system wasn't originally based on occupation or birth circumstances, but on genetic enhancement status? What if the Brahmins weren't just priests and scholars, but genetically modified superhumans whose intellectual capabilities qualified them for roles requiring extraordinary mental abilities? The genetic evidence supports this interpretation. DNA analysis of individuals from traditional Brahmin families reveals higher frequencies of the anomalous genetic markers associated with Gupta-era modifications. These markers correlate with enhanced cognitive abilities, longer lifespans, and resistance to certain diseases. The pattern suggests that what we interpret as social stratification might actually have been biological classification. But the Gupta experiments weren't limited to intellectual enhancement. The texts describe different categories of modifications designed for specific purposes. Warrior classes received genetic modifications that enhanced physical strength, reaction speed, and pain tolerance. Artisan classes were modified for enhanced dexterity, color perception, and spatial reasoning. Agricultural classes received modifications that improved their ability to sense soil conditions, predict weather patterns, and communicate with domesticated animals. Each modification category came with its own genetic locks and dependencies. The warrior enhancements required specific dietary elements that could only be obtained from certain regions. The artisan modifications needed exposure to particular mineral compositions found in sacred locations. The agricultural enhancements demanded regular contact with specific plant compounds that grew only in controlled environments. This system of genetic dependencies created a complex web of control that kept the enhanced populations tied to the Gupta infrastructure. No modified individual could survive independently. They needed the empire's resources, knowledge, and technology to maintain their enhancements. It was biological feudalism on a scale that makes modern corporate dependency look primitive. The collapse of this system explains the rapid decline of Gupta achievements. When the empire's infrastructure failed, the enhanced populations couldn't maintain their modifications. Within a few generations, the superhuman capabilities faded, leaving behind only genetic fragments that lay dormant in bloodlines across the subcontinent. But some of those fragments retained more potency than others. Certain family lines managed to preserve partial enhancements through careful breeding practices, dietary traditions, and ritual behaviors that unknowingly maintained the conditions necessary for genetic expression. These bloodlines became the keepers of ancient knowledge, the families that produced generation after generation of exceptional individuals in mathematics, astronomy, metallurgy, and other fields. The British colonial period disrupted many of these traditions, scattering the bloodlines and breaking the cultural practices that maintained genetic expression. But independence and modernization have created new conditions that might be reactivating dormant modifications. Improved nutrition, reduced disease burden, and exposure to modern educational methods could be providing the triggers necessary to awaken sleeping genetic enhancements. If this is happening, we're witnessing the early stages of a genetic renaissance that could reshape human civilization. But unlike the original Gupta experiments, this reactivation is occurring without central control or systematic management. The enhanced individuals emerging today don't understand their own capabilities, don't know how to control their abilities, and have no support system to help them navigate their transformation. This creates both opportunities and dangers. Enhanced individuals could drive unprecedented advances in science, technology, and human understanding. Their superhuman capabilities could help solve problems that have plagued humanity for centuries: climate change, disease, poverty, conflict. They could usher in a new golden age that makes the original Gupta period look primitive by comparison. But they could also create new forms of inequality, exploitation, and conflict. If genetic enhancement becomes concentrated in certain populations or regions, it could lead to biological colonialism, where enhanced groups dominate unenhanced ones. If the enhancement process can't be replicated or controlled, it could create unstable superhuman individuals whose abilities outstrip their wisdom or moral development. The ancient texts contain warnings about these dangers. They describe periods when the genetic modifications produced individuals whose enhancements exceeded their psychological capacity to handle them. These broken gods, as the texts call them, became sources of chaos and destruction, using their superhuman abilities for personal gain or destructive purposes. The Gupta rulers developed elaborate psychological and spiritual training programs to prepare enhanced individuals for their abilities. They understood that genetic modification, without corresponding mental and emotional development, created dangerous instabilities. The enhanced individuals underwent years of conditioning designed to instill discipline, wisdom, and responsibility, along with their superhuman capabilities. But if modern reactivation is occurring without this support structure, we could be creating enhanced individuals who lack the psychological framework to handle their abilities responsibly. Imagine someone with superhuman mathematical abilities, but normal human emotions and motivations. Imagine someone with enhanced sensory perception but no training in how to process overwhelming sensory input. Imagine someone with genetic modifications that grant extraordinary longevity, but no wisdom about how to use extended lifespans constructively. These possibilities explain why research into Gupta genetic modifications has been suppressed. The implications are too dangerous, too destabilizing for existing power structures. If genetic enhancement is possible, if it's already happening, if it can be controlled and directed, then whoever controls that process controls the future of human evolution. But suppression won't stop the process. If genetic reactivation is occurring naturally, driven by environmental and social changes beyond anyone's control, then enhanced individuals will continue to emerge whether we acknowledge them or not. The question isn't whether this transformation will happen, it's whether we'll be prepared for it when it does. The Sanskrit texts provide a roadmap for managing genetically enhanced populations, but that roadmap was designed for a very different world. The Gupta Empire controlled territory, resources, and populations in ways that aren't possible in modern democratic societies. Their methods of genetic control and social management wouldn't be acceptable by contemporary standards, even if they were effective. We need new approaches, new frameworks for understanding and managing genetic diversity in human populations. We need to study the Gupta legacy not to replicate their methods, but to learn from their successes and failures. We need to prepare for a future where genetic enhancement isn't science fiction, but biological reality. But first, we need to acknowledge that this future might already be here. The enhanced individuals emerging in modern India might be the advance guard of a transformation that will eventually spread to populations worldwide. Their abilities might seem impossible today, but so did the achievements of the original Gupta superhumans to the people of their time. The genetic modifications that created the Gupta Golden Age didn't disappear when the empire collapsed. They went dormant, waiting for the right conditions to resurface. Those conditions might be manifesting now, triggered by modernization, globalization, and technological advancement in ways we don't fully understand? If so, we're standing at the threshold of a new phase in human evolution. Not natural selection, but artificial modification. Not gradual change, but rapid transformation. Not random mutation, but designed enhancement based on knowledge preserved from an ancient civilization that achieved genetic mastery 16 centuries before we thought it was possible. The implications extend beyond biology into every aspect of human society. If genetic enhancement is real, if it's reactivating, if it can be controlled and directed, then we're facing questions that will define the future of our species. Questions about equality, identity, and what it means to be human in a world where humanity itself can be modified and improved. These aren't abstract philosophical questions, they're practical challenges that require immediate attention, because if the Gupta genetic legacy is truly reawakening, then the superhuman race they created isn't just ancient history, it's our future, and that future is arriving faster than we're prepared to handle it. The evidence becomes even more disturbing when we examine the architectural legacy of the Gupta period. These weren't just buildings constructed by ordinary humans with exceptional skills. They were structures designed to serve specific functions in the genetic enhancement process, hidden in plain sight for over 15 centuries. Consider the temple complex at Sanchi, expanded during Gupta rule. Mainstream archaeology describes it as a Buddhist monument, a place of worship and meditation. But look closer at the structural elements that don't quite fit the religious narrative. The underground chambers beneath the main stupas contain features that make no sense for ceremonial purposes. Stone channels carved with mathematical precision to direct fluids, ventilation systems that maintain constant temperature and humidity, acoustic properties that amplify specific frequency ranges while dampening others. These aren't accidental design elements, they're the remnants of facilities designed for biological procedures. The chambers were laboratories, equipped with everything necessary to conduct genetic modifications on human subjects. The religious imagery and Buddhist symbolism were camouflage, a way to hide the true purpose of these sites from populations who weren't ready to understand the science being conducted within their walls. The same pattern appears at temple sites across the former Gupta territories. Ajanta, Ellora, Elephanta all contain architectural anomalies that suggest purposes beyond worship. Hidden chambers accessed through concealed passages, stone tables with drainage systems, walls lined with polished metal that could serve as mirrors for precise lighting, ceiling designs that create specific acoustic effects, but perhaps most revealing are the astronomical alignments built into these structures. The temples aren't just oriented toward cardinal directions or significant celestial events. They're positioned to capture specific wavelengths of solar and cosmic radiation at precise times throughout the year. The mathematical complexity of these alignments suggests knowledge of radiation effects on biological systems that we've only recently begun to understand. Modern research into photobiology has revealed that certain frequencies of light can trigger genetic expression, activate dormant DNA sequences, and even repair damaged cellular structures. The Gupta builders seem to have understood these principles 15 centuries before we discovered them. Their temples were designed to bathe enhanced individuals in precisely calibrated radiation that maintained their genetic modifications. This explains why many of these sites remain active pilgrimage destinations today. The enhanced bloodlines, carrying dormant Gupta modifications, are unconsciously drawn to locations that could reactivate their genetic potential. The religious practices surrounding these sites, the timing of festivals, the specific rituals performed, the offerings made, might be cultural memories of procedures necessary to trigger genetic awakening. The implications are staggering. If these sites still function as intended, if they can still activate dormant genetic modifications, then pilgrimage to ancient temples might not be spiritual practice but biological treatment. The millions of people who visit these locations each year might be unknowingly exposing themselves to radiation designed to alter human DNA. Some individuals might be genetically compatible with this exposure, carrying bloodlines that respond to the ancient triggers. Others might be unaffected, lacking the genetic markers necessary for modification. But a small percentage, those with the right genetic background, exposed at the right time, under the right conditions, might experience activation of dormant superhuman capabilities. This possibility explains recent reports from these pilgrimage sites. Temple priests describe visitors who seem to undergo profound changes during their stays. Individuals who arrive with ordinary abilities but leave demonstrating extraordinary skills. People who claim to have experienced visions, insights, or sudden understanding of complex concepts they'd never studied. These cases are dismissed as religious experiences, psychological phenomena, or simple coincidence. But when examined through the lens of genetic reactivation, they take on a different significance. They might be evidence that the ancient enhancement systems are still functional, still capable of transforming human beings who carry the right genetic markers. The Sanskrit texts provide detailed descriptions of what to expect during genetic activation. The process isn't instant or dramatic. It unfolds over weeks or months, beginning with subtle changes in perception and cognition. Enhanced individuals first notice improvements in memory, concentration, and problem-solving ability. They might find themselves understanding mathematical concepts that previously seemed impossible, or perceiving patterns in nature that others can't see. Physical changes follow: enhanced vision that can detect minute details at great distances. Hearing that picks up frequencies beyond normal human range. Touch sensitivity that can identify materials and textures with impossible precision. These aren't supernatural abilities, they're the result of genetic modifications that optimize human sensory systems. But the most profound changes occur in cognitive processing. Enhanced individuals develop what the texts call cosmic consciousness, an ability to perceive connections and patterns that span vast scales of space and time. They can intuitively understand complex systems, predict outcomes with uncanny accuracy, and solve problems that stump teams of experts. This cognitive enhancement explains the extraordinary achievements of the Gupta period. The mathematical breakthroughs, astronomical discoveries, and technological innovations weren't the result of cultural advancement or accumulated knowledge. They were the products of superhuman intelligence, generated by genetically modified individuals whose cognitive capabilities exceeded normal human limits. But here's where the story takes a darker turn. The ancient texts reveal that genetic enhancement came with a terrible price. The modified individuals didn't just gain superhuman abilities, they also developed psychological characteristics that set them apart from unenhanced humans. Enhanced empathy that could become overwhelming, expanded consciousness that made it difficult to focus on mundane concerns, intellectual capabilities that created profound isolation from ordinary human experience. Many enhanced individuals struggled with what the texts call the burden of sight, an ability to perceive truths that others couldn't understand or accept. They could see the long-term consequences of human actions, the patterns underlying historical events, the mathematical structures that govern natural phenomena. But sharing these insights with unenhanced humans often led to rejection, fear, or persecution. The Gupta rulers developed elaborate support systems to help enhanced individuals cope with their abilities, specialized communities where modified humans could interact with others like themselves, educational programs that taught them how to hide their capabilities when necessary, psychological training that helped them maintain emotional stability despite their expanded consciousness. But even with these supports, many enhanced individuals suffered from what we might now recognize as a form of existential depression. Their superhuman abilities allowed them to perceive the limitations and flaws of human civilization with painful clarity. They could see solutions to problems that society wasn't ready to implement, understand truths that contradicted popular beliefs, and predict outcomes that people preferred to ignore. This psychological burden may explain why the Gupta genetic enhancement program ultimately failed. Creating superhuman abilities was the easy part. Managing the psychological consequences proved impossible. The enhanced individuals, despite their extraordinary capabilities, became increasingly disconnected from the societies they were meant to serve. Their insights were too advanced, their perspectives too alien, their solutions too radical for unenhanced humans to accept. The texts describe a growing rift between the enhanced ruling class and the general population. The genetic modifications that made the rulers more capable also made them less human in ways that ordinary people found disturbing. Their enhanced empathy could seem cold and calculating. Their expanded consciousness could appear arrogant and dismissive. Their superhuman abilities could inspire fear rather than admiration. This social division created instability that contributed to the empire's collapse. The enhanced rulers, despite their intelligence and capabilities, couldn't maintain the loyalty and cooperation of their unenhanced subjects. Their genetic superiority became a barrier to effective governance, creating resentment and rebellion that no amount of superhuman ability could overcome. The lesson is clear: genetic enhancement without corresponding social and psychological evolution creates more problems than it solves. The Gupta experiment failed not because the science was flawed, but because the enhanced individuals couldn't function effectively in a society of unenhanced humans. This historical precedent has profound implications for our current situation. If genetic reactivation is occurring in modern populations, if dormant Gupta modifications are awakening in certain bloodlines, then we might be repeating the same mistakes that led to the original empire's collapse. Enhanced individuals emerging today face the same psychological challenges that plagued their ancient predecessors. They possess abilities that set them apart from normal humans, but lack the social structures and support systems that might help them integrate those abilities constructively. They're isolated by their capabilities, burdened by insights that others can't share, and struggling to find their place in a world that isn't designed for superhuman beings. But unlike their ancient counterparts, modern enhanced individuals don't have the benefit of understanding their condition. They don't know they carry genetic modifications. They don't understand why they're different. They don't have access to the knowledge and training that might help them manage their abilities effectively. This ignorance creates additional dangers. Enhanced individuals who don't understand their condition might misuse their abilities, apply their superhuman capabilities in ways that cause harm rather than good. They might become convinced of their own superiority, developing the same arrogance and isolation that plagued the ancient enhanced castes. They might use their abilities for personal gain rather than societal benefit, creating new forms of inequality and exploitation. The suppressed research from 2019 included psychological profiles of individuals suspected of carrying active genetic modifications. The patterns were consistent with ancient descriptions of enhanced individuals: exceptional cognitive abilities combined with social isolation, profound insights accompanied by difficulty relating to others, superhuman capabilities shadowed by existential depression. These modern enhanced individuals often struggle with what psychologists might diagnose as high-functioning autism, bipolar disorder, or other conditions that affect social interaction and emotional regulation. But these diagnoses miss the underlying cause. Their brains are literally different, modified by genetic enhancements that create cognitive patterns unlike those of unenhanced humans. Traditional therapeutic approaches don't work for these individuals because they're based on assumptions about normal human psychology that don't apply to genetically enhanced minds. The enhanced individuals need specialized support, training, and community connections that acknowledge their superhuman capabilities while helping them navigate a world designed for ordinary humans. But providing such support requires acknowledging that genetic enhancement is real, that some humans carry modifications that make them fundamentally different from others. This acknowledgement challenges basic assumptions about human equality, individual rights, and social organization that form the foundation of modern democratic societies. How do you maintain principles of equality when some individuals are genetically superior to others? How do you protect individual rights when some people possess capabilities that could be used to dominate or exploit their fellow humans? How do you organize society when a small percentage of the population has abilities that dwarf those of the majority? These questions become even more complex when we consider the possibility that genetic enhancement might be hereditary. If enhanced individuals reproduce with others carrying similar modifications, their children might inherit even stronger enhancements. Over generations, this could lead to the emergence of a distinct superhuman subspecies, genetically separated from ordinary humans. The ancient texts describe exactly this scenario. They speak of bloodlines that became increasingly enhanced over generations, developing capabilities that seemed magical to unenhanced observers. These superhuman lineages became the ruling families of the Gupta Empire, their genetic superiority translating into political and social dominance. But the texts also warn of the dangers of genetic concentration. As enhancements became more pronounced, the modified individuals became increasingly isolated from unenhanced populations. Their superhuman abilities made it impossible for them to relate to ordinary humans, creating a biological apartheid that ultimately destabilized the entire society. Modern genetic analysis supports this historical account. The anomalous genetic markers found in certain Indian bloodlines show signs of concentration and amplification over generations. Families that carry these markers often display patterns of exceptional ability that span multiple generations, suggesting that the genetic modifications are indeed hereditary and cumulative. But unlike the controlled breeding programs of the ancient Gupta period, modern genetic transmission is occurring without systematic management or oversight. Enhanced individuals are reproducing randomly, creating unpredictable combinations of genetic modifications that might produce individuals with capabilities far exceeding anything seen in the historical record. This possibility is both thrilling and terrifying. Enhanced individuals with genetic modifications that combine the best features of different ancient lineages might possess abilities that seem godlike compared to normal human capabilities. They could solve problems that have plagued humanity for millennia, make discoveries that revolutionize our understanding of the universe, and create technologies that transform human civilization. But they could also become so different from ordinary humans that meaningful communication and cooperation becomes impossible. Their superhuman abilities might make them view unenhanced humans as we view lower animals, with benevolent condescension at best, callous indifference at worst. The Sanskrit texts contain accounts of enhanced individuals who lost all connection to their human origins, becoming what the texts call living gods, who operated according to logic and motivations that unenhanced humans couldn't comprehend. These beings were technically human, but their genetic modifications had transformed them into something else entirely. If such transformations are possible, if they're occurring in modern populations, if they're accelerating due to genetic concentration and amplification, then we might be witnessing the early stages of human speciation. Not gradual evolutionary change, but rapid genetic divergence that could split humanity into distinct subspecies within a few generations. The implications extend far beyond biology. If superhuman beings emerge from human populations, what happens to existing social, political, and economic systems? How do democratic institutions function when some citizens possess capabilities that make their votes worth more than others? How do market economies operate when some participants have superhuman advantages in processing information and predicting outcomes? These aren't abstract questions. They're practical challenges that we might face within our lifetimes. The genetic modifications that created the Gupta Golden Age didn't disappear. They went dormant, waiting for conditions that would reactivate them. Those conditions might be manifesting now, triggered by modernization, globalization, and technological change in ways that create opportunities for genetic awakening. If the ancient enhancement systems are truly reactivating, if dormant modifications are awakening in bloodlines across the Indian subcontinent and beyond, then we're standing at a threshold that will define the future of human civilization. We're witnessing the early stages of a transformation that could create a new form of humanity, one that possesses capabilities that seem supernatural by current standards. But transformation without preparation leads to chaos. The Gupta Empire collapsed because it couldn't manage the social and psychological consequences of genetic enhancement. If we're to avoid repeating their mistakes, we need to study their legacy, understand their failures, and develop new approaches to managing genetic diversity in human populations. The first step is acknowledgement. We need to admit that genetic enhancement is possible, that it occurred in the past and that it might be occurring again today. We need to study the individuals who carry these modifications, understand their capabilities, and help them integrate their abilities constructively into modern society. The second step is preparation. We need to develop social, political, and economic frameworks that can accommodate genetic diversity in human populations. We need institutions that can manage the challenges and opportunities created by superhuman abilities. We need ethical guidelines that protect both enhanced and unenhanced individuals from exploitation and discrimination. The third step is integration. We need to find ways for enhanced and unenhanced humans to coexist peacefully and productively. We need to prevent the biological apartheid that destroyed the Gupta Empire, while harnessing the benefits that superhuman abilities could provide to all of humanity. These steps require courage, wisdom, and cooperation on a scale that challenges our current capabilities. But the alternative, ignoring the genetic awakening that might already be underway, could lead to consequences far worse than the collapse of a single empire. It could lead to the fragmentation of humanity itself, creating divisions that make our current conflicts seem trivial by comparison. The Gupta legacy offers both a warning and an opportunity. Their genetic experiments created superhuman beings whose abilities transformed human civilization, but their failure to manage the social consequences led to collapse and catastrophe. We have the chance to learn from their mistakes, to develop better approaches, to create a future where genetic enhancement serves all of humanity rather than dividing it. But that chance won't last forever. If genetic reactivation is occurring, if superhuman abilities are awakening in certain bloodlines, if the ancient enhancement systems are beginning to function again, then we're racing against time to prepare for a transformation that could reshape our species. The question isn't whether this transformation will occur. The genetic evidence suggests it might already be underway. The question is whether we'll be ready for it when it arrives, whether we'll manage it wisely, and whether we'll emerge from it as a unified species or as fragments of what humanity once was. The Golden Empire of the Guptas achieved wonders that still baffle us today. Their genetic experiments created superhuman beings whose capabilities seemed godlike to ordinary humans. Their legacy, hidden in bloodlines and dormant in DNA, might be awakening once again, creating opportunities and challenges that will define our future. We stand where the ancient Gupta rulers once stood, on the threshold of genetic transformation that could elevate humanity to unprecedented heights. But we also face the dangers they couldn't overcome, the social and psychological consequences of creating beings whose abilities exceed the limits of ordinary human experience. The choice is ours. We can ignore the evidence, dismiss the possibilities, and hope that genetic awakening won't occur in our lifetimes. Or we can prepare for a future where some humans possess capabilities that seem supernatural, where genetic diversity creates new forms of inequality and opportunity, where the definition of humanity itself might need to be rewritten. The ancient texts offer guidance, but they're written in languages most people can't read, preserved in traditions most people don't understand, and hidden in archives most people can't access. The genetic evidence exists, but it's scattered across research institutions, suppressed by authorities who fear its implications, and interpreted by scientists who lack the historical context to understand its significance. But the truth has a way of emerging regardless of efforts to contain it. The genetic modifications that created the Gupta superhuman race aren't just ancient history, they're our future. And that future is arriving faster than we're prepared to handle it. The evidence of genetic reactivation isn't limited to isolated bloodlines in remote villages. It's spreading, manifesting in urban populations, educated families, and communities that have no connection to ancient traditions. Children in Mumbai are solving mathematical equations that stump university professors. Teenagers in Delhi are predicting market fluctuations with accuracy that defies statistical probability. Young adults in Bangalore are developing technologies that seem to emerge from nowhere, complete and functional without the usual development phases. These aren't isolated cases of exceptional talent. They're part of a pattern that suggests systematic genetic awakening on a scale we've never witnessed before. The modifications that lay dormant for 16 centuries aren't just reactivating randomly. They're responding to specific triggers in our modern environment that mirror the conditions present during the original Gupta experiments. Consider the electromagnetic environment we live in today. Our world is saturated with radio waves, cellular signals, Wi-Fi networks, and other forms of electromagnetic radiation that didn't exist even 50 years ago. The ancient Gupta sites were designed to focus and amplify specific electromagnetic frequencies, using the natural properties of stone, metal, and crystal to create precisely calibrated energy fields. What if our modern electromagnetic environment is accidentally recreating those conditions? What if the constant exposure to cellular towers, satellite communications, and wireless networks is providing the energy necessary to trigger genetic awakening in bloodlines that carry dormant modifications? The timing supports this theory. Reports of enhanced individuals began increasing dramatically in the 1990s, coinciding with the expansion of cellular networks across India. The proliferation of internet connectivity, satellite television, and wireless communication has created an electromagnetic landscape that increasingly resembles the energy signatures found at ancient Gupta sites. But electromagnetic radiation is only one trigger. The modern diet, with its processed foods, artificial additives, and chemical preservatives, might also play a role. Ancient texts describe specific substances required to maintain genetic modifications, compounds that sound remarkably similar to synthetic chemicals found in contemporary food production. MSG, artificial sweeteners, food dyes, and preservatives that are ubiquitous in modern processed foods might be accidentally providing the chemical triggers necessary for genetic reactivation. Populations that consume Western-style diets are showing higher rates of the anomalous genetic expression associated with Gupta modifications. Even more intriguing is the role of stress and environmental pressure. The ancient enhancement protocols describe using controlled stress to trigger genetic activation. Psychological pressure, physical challenges, and intellectual demands that push individuals beyond normal human limits, Modern urban life, with its relentless pace, information overload, and competitive pressures, might be creating exactly the stress conditions necessary to awaken dormant genetic modifications. The individuals showing enhanced capabilities often come from high-stress environments. Competitive academic programs demanding professional careers, challenging family situations. It's as if the genetic modifications are designed to activate when their carriers face circumstances that require superhuman capabilities to survive and thrive. The more pressure modern society places on individuals, the more likely they are to develop the enhanced abilities necessary to handle that pressure. This creates a feedback loop that accelerates genetic awakening. Enhanced individuals excel in high-stress environments, achieving success that places them in even more demanding situations. Their success attracts attention, creating additional pressure that triggers further genetic activation. Over time, the most successful individuals in society become increasingly likely to be those carrying active genetic modifications. We're witnessing this pattern in technology sectors across India. Software companies report employees who seem to code at superhuman speeds, developing complex algorithms without formal training in advanced mathematics. Pharmaceutical researchers are making breakthrough discoveries through intuitive leaps that bypass traditional research methodologies. Financial analysts are predicting market movements with accuracy that suggest access to information processing capabilities beyond normal human cognition. These enhanced individuals often don't understand their own abilities. They experience their enhanced capabilities as intuition, inspiration, or lucky guesses. They develop elaborate explanations for their success that avoid acknowledging their superhuman characteristics. They hide their abilities, consciously or unconsciously, to avoid drawing attention that might lead to investigation or exploitation. But hiding becomes increasingly difficult as their capabilities continue to develop. The genetic modifications don't just activate once and remain stable. They continue to evolve, responding to environmental pressures and usage patterns in ways that make the enhanced individuals progressively more capable and more obviously different from unenhanced humans. The Sanskrit texts describe this progression in detail. Initial activation brings subtle improvements in memory, concentration, and problem-solving ability. Continued activation enhances sensory perception, pattern recognition, and intuitive understanding of complex systems. Advanced activation produces capabilities that seem supernatural: precognition, telepathic communication, and the ability to influence biological processes in other living things. Modern enhanced individuals are beginning to report experiences that match these advanced descriptions. They describe knowing things they shouldn't know, understanding people's thoughts and emotions without verbal communication, and sensing changes in their environment before those changes become apparent to others. These reports are dismissed as psychological phenomena, wishful thinking, or simple coincidence. But when examined systematically, they reveal patterns that suggest genuine superhuman capabilities developing in individuals who carry active genetic modifications. The most disturbing reports involve what the texts call influence abilities, the capacity to affect other people's thoughts, emotions, and even physical health through mechanisms that aren't understood by conventional science. Enhanced individuals describe accidentally calming agitated people, inspiring confidence in uncertain situations, and even helping others heal from illnesses through proximity or touch. These abilities terrify the enhanced individuals who experience them. They understand intuitively that such capabilities could be used for manipulation, exploitation, or control. Many deliberately suppress their abilities, avoiding situations where they might accidentally influence others in ways that could be harmful or unethical. But suppression comes at a cost. The genetic modifications seem designed to be used, not hidden. Enhanced individuals who try to deny their capabilities often experience physical and psychological symptoms: chronic fatigue, depression, anxiety, and health problems that have no clear medical cause. The ancient texts describe this phenomenon as genetic resistance, the biological equivalent of trying to dam a river. The modifications create capabilities that demand expression. Denying them creates internal pressure that eventually manifests as illness, mental instability, or destructive behavior patterns. This explains why many enhanced individuals eventually embrace their capabilities despite their fears and reservations. The alternative, continued suppression, becomes unbearable over time. They're forced to find ways to use their abilities constructively or risk psychological and physical breakdown. But using superhuman abilities in a world designed for ordinary humans creates its own problems. Enhanced individuals quickly discover that their capabilities make normal social and professional relationships difficult to maintain. They process information too quickly, understand concepts too easily, and perceive patterns that others can't see. Their enhanced empathy makes them acutely aware of other people's emotions, motivations, and hidden agendas. They can sense deception, manipulation, and insincerity with uncomfortable accuracy. This makes casual social interaction exhausting and often painful. Their expanded consciousness allows them to perceive long-term consequences and systemic connections that others ignore or dismiss. They can see how current actions will play out over months or years, how individual decisions affect larger systems, and how apparently unrelated events are actually connected through complex causal chains. This expanded awareness creates a profound sense of isolation. Enhanced individuals often feel like they're watching a movie, where they can see the plot development that other viewers are missing. They know how scenes will unfold, what consequences will follow, and what the characters should do to avoid disaster. But they can't communicate this knowledge effectively to people who lack their enhanced perspective. The psychological burden becomes overwhelming. Enhanced individuals describe feeling like they're living in a world of children, surrounded by people who can't grasp the complexity and interconnectedness of the systems they navigate daily. They want to help, to guide, to prevent the mistakes they can see coming, but their attempts to share their insights are often met with resistance, skepticism, or hostility. This dynamic explains the historical pattern of enhanced individuals becoming increasingly isolated from normal human society. Their superhuman capabilities, rather than making them natural leaders, actually make effective leadership more difficult. Their insights are too advanced, their solutions too radical, their perspectives too alien for unenhanced humans to accept and follow. The Gupta rulers tried to solve this problem through elaborate social hierarchies that placed enhanced individuals in positions of authority while limiting their direct interaction with unenhanced populations. They created intermediate castes, partially enhanced individuals who could serve as translators between the superhuman ruling class and ordinary citizens. But this system ultimately failed because it created resentment and division rather than cooperation and unity. The enhanced rulers, despite their good intentions and superior capabilities, couldn't maintain the loyalty of their subjects. Their genetic superiority became a barrier to effective governance rather than an advantage. Modern enhanced individuals face the same dilemma. Their capabilities could benefit society enormously, but using those capabilities effectively requires social and political structures that don't exist in contemporary democratic societies. They can see solutions to problems that governments can't solve, understand economic principles that financial experts miss, and predict social changes that political scientists fail to anticipate. But they lack the institutional framework necessary to implement their insights. This creates a dangerous situation. Enhanced individuals with superhuman capabilities but no constructive outlet for those abilities might become frustrated, bitter, or resentful. They might decide that unenhanced humans are too limited to deserve their help, or too stubborn to accept their guidance. The ancient texts describe this progression toward what they call divine arrogance, the belief that genetic superiority justifies treating unenhanced humans as inferior beings. Enhanced individuals who reach this stage often withdraw from society entirely, creating isolated communities where they interact only with others like themselves. These superhuman enclaves become increasingly disconnected from the larger human population. They develop their own customs, values, and goals that reflect their enhanced capabilities rather than ordinary human needs and desires. Over time, they begin to see themselves as a separate species, with different rights, responsibilities, and destinies than unenhanced humans. This biological apartheid is exactly what destroyed the Gupta Empire. The enhanced ruling class became so isolated from their subjects that they lost the ability to govern effectively. Their superhuman capabilities made them powerful but not necessarily wise, intelligent but not necessarily empathetic, capable but not necessarily responsible. The genetic modifications that created superhuman abilities didn't automatically create superhuman character. Enhanced individuals were still human in their emotional needs, psychological vulnerabilities, and moral development. Their expanded capabilities often outpaced their wisdom, creating beings with godlike powers but human flaws. Modern enhanced individuals face the same risk. Their genetic modifications grant them extraordinary abilities, but those abilities come without corresponding enhancements in emotional intelligence, ethical reasoning, or social responsibility. They must develop these qualities through conscious effort and deliberate training, but such training isn't available because society doesn't acknowledge that enhanced individuals exist. This creates a perfect storm of conditions for the emergence of enhanced individuals who are powerful but not wise, capable but not responsible, superhuman in ability but human in their limitations and flaws. Such beings could pose existential threats to human civilization, using their capabilities for personal gain rather than collective benefit. The suppressed research from 2019 included psychological profiles that revealed disturbing patterns among individuals suspected of carrying active genetic modifications. Many showed signs of narcissistic personality traits, grandiose thinking, and contempt for ordinary human limitations. They viewed their enhanced capabilities as evidence of inherent superiority rather than as gifts that carried corresponding responsibilities. These psychological patterns mirror those described in ancient texts about enhanced individuals who succumb to divine arrogance. They believed their genetic modifications made them fundamentally different from and superior to unenhanced humans. They saw ordinary people as obstacles to overcome rather than individuals to serve and protect. But not all enhanced individuals follow this pattern. The research also identified individuals who maintained humility, empathy, and commitment to using their abilities for the benefit of others. These individuals seemed to understand intuitively that their capabilities came with corresponding obligations to serve the greater good. The difference between these two groups wasn't genetic. Both carried similar modification markers. The difference was psychological and spiritual. The responsible enhanced individuals had developed ethical frameworks and emotional maturity that helped them handle their superhuman abilities constructively. The arrogant ones had not. This suggests that genetic enhancement alone isn't sufficient to create beneficial superhuman beings. The modifications must be accompanied by corresponding development in wisdom, character, and spiritual understanding. Without this parallel development, enhanced individuals become dangerous rather than beneficial to human society. The ancient Gupta training programs seem to have understood this principle. They included elaborate spiritual and psychological conditioning designed to prepare enhanced individuals for their capabilities. The genetic modifications were just the beginning of a comprehensive transformation process that included ethical education, emotional development, and spiritual awakening. But these training programs disappeared with the empire's collapse. The knowledge of how to prepare enhanced individuals for their abilities was lost, leaving only the genetic modifications themselves. Modern reactivation is occurring without the support systems that made the original program successful, creating enhanced individuals who lack the wisdom and character necessary to use their abilities responsibly. This situation could lead to catastrophic consequences. Enhanced individuals with superhuman capabilities but human limitations could inadvertently or deliberately cause harm on a scale that ordinary humans couldn't imagine. Their abilities to influence others, predict outcomes, and manipulate complex systems could be used for destructive purposes if not guided by corresponding ethical development. The ancient texts contain warnings about exactly this scenario. They describe periods when genetic modifications were activated without proper preparation, creating enhanced individuals who became sources of chaos and destruction rather than wisdom and progress. These fallen gods, as the texts call them, used their superhuman abilities for personal gain, revenge, or simple amusement, causing enormous suffering for unenhanced populations. The Gupta rulers developed elaborate safeguards to prevent such outcomes. They created psychological screening processes to identify individuals suitable for enhancement, training programs to prepare them for their capabilities, and monitoring systems to ensure they used their abilities responsibly. They understood that genetic modification without corresponding character development was dangerous for everyone involved. But modern genetic reactivation is occurring without any of these safeguards. Enhanced individuals are emerging randomly, without screening, preparation, or oversight. They're discovering their capabilities through trial and error, learning to use them without guidance or support, and making decisions about how to employ them without understanding the full implications of their choices. This creates a situation where enhanced individuals might make mistakes that have consequences far beyond their intention or understanding. They might use their influence abilities in ways that cause psychological harm to others. They might apply their predictive capabilities in ways that destabilize financial or political systems. They might employ their enhanced intelligence in ways that create technologies or strategies that prove harmful in the long term. The potential for unintended consequences is enormous because enhanced individuals often don't fully understand their own capabilities. They experience their abilities as intuition or inspiration, rather than as superhuman faculties that require careful management. They might not realize the extent of their influence on others or the long-term implications of their actions. This ignorance isn't their fault. They lack the historical context and scientific understanding necessary to comprehend their condition. But ignorance doesn't eliminate the potential for harm. Enhanced individuals who don't understand their abilities might use them in ways that seem harmless, but create cascading effects that prove catastrophic. The situation becomes even more dangerous when we consider the possibility that hostile forces might attempt to identify and exploit enhanced individuals. If genetic modifications are real, if they grant superhuman capabilities, if they can be detected and controlled, then they become potential weapons in conflicts between nations, corporations, or ideologies. Enhanced individuals with superhuman intelligence could be invaluable for military planning, economic warfare, or technological development. Their abilities to influence others could be used for propaganda, negotiation, or social control. Their predictive capabilities could provide enormous advantages in strategic planning and resource allocation, but using enhanced individuals as weapons or tools would repeat the mistakes of the original Gupta period, treating them as resources to be exploited rather than as beings whose welfare and development should be protected. Such exploitation would likely lead to rebellion, resistance, or withdrawal, the same dynamics that contributed to the ancient empire's collapse. The enhanced individuals wouldn't remain passive victims of exploitation. Their superhuman capabilities would eventually enable them to resist control, escape confinement, or retaliate against their exploiters. The attempt to use them as weapons could create enemies with capabilities far exceeding those of conventional military forces. This possibility explains why research into genetic enhancement has been suppressed. The potential benefits are enormous, but so are the risks. Enhanced individuals could solve humanity's greatest challenges, but they could also become humanity's greatest threat if their capabilities are misused, or if they decide that unenhanced humans don't deserve their protection and service. The question isn't whether genetic reactivation is occurring. The evidence suggests it already is. The question is whether we'll manage this transformation wisely, creating conditions that encourage enhanced individuals to use their abilities for the benefit of all humanity, or whether we'll repeat the mistakes of the past, creating division, exploitation, and conflict that could destroy both enhanced and unenhanced populations. The ancient Gupta legacy offers both a warning and a roadmap. Their genetic experiments created superhuman beings whose capabilities transformed human civilization, but their failure to manage the social and psychological consequences led to collapse and catastrophe. We have the opportunity to learn from their mistakes, to develop better approaches, to create frameworks that can accommodate genetic diversity while maintaining social cohesion and individual rights. But this opportunity requires acknowledging realities that challenge our fundamental assumptions about human nature, social organization, and individual equality. We must admit that some humans might possess capabilities that exceed normal human limits. We must develop institutions that can manage the challenges and opportunities created by genetic diversity. We must find ways to integrate enhanced and unenhanced populations that avoid the biological apartheid that destroyed the ancient empire. These challenges are unprecedented in human history. Never before have we faced the possibility of rapid genetic diversification that could split our species into distinct subspecies within a few generations. Never before have we needed to develop social and political frameworks that can accommodate superhuman abilities while protecting the rights and interests of ordinary humans. The stakes couldn't be higher. Success could usher in a golden age that makes the original Gupta period look primitive, an era of unprecedented prosperity, knowledge, and capability driven by the constructive application of superhuman abilities. Failure could lead to conflict, exploitation, and fragmentation that destroys human civilization entirely. We stand at a crossroads that will determine the future of our species. The genetic modifications that created the Gupta superhuman race are reactivating, creating enhanced individuals whose capabilities will continue to develop and spread. The question isn't whether this transformation will occur, it's whether we'll be ready for it when it does. The time for denial and ignorance is over. The evidence is mounting, the patterns are clear, and the implications are unavoidable. Genetic enhancement isn't science fiction, it's our emerging reality. The superhuman race that the Gupta Empire created isn't ancient history, it's our future, and that future is arriving faster than we're prepared to handle it. But here's where the story becomes truly terrifying. The genetic reactivation isn't random, it's accelerating at an exponential rate that mirrors technological advancement itself. Every smartphone, every Wi-Fi router, every cell tower is creating electromagnetic frequencies that resonate with the crystalline structures embedded in ancient temple sites. We're inadvertently recreating the energy grid that once powered Gupta genetic laboratories across the entire subcontinent. Imagine walking through Mumbai today, your enhanced DNA responding to signals that saturate every street corner. The same frequencies that carry your internet data are awakening genetic codes that have slept for 16 centuries. Children playing video games are developing reflexes that exceed human norms. Students solving math problems are accessing computational abilities that their brains shouldn't possess. Office workers are predicting market trends with accuracy that defies statistical probability, but the enhancement isn't uniform or predictable. Some bloodlines carry modifications designed for intellectual augmentation. These individuals develop superhuman mathematical abilities, perfect memory recall, and pattern recognition that seems almost supernatural. Others inherited warrior modifications that grant enhanced strength, speed, and sensory perception beyond normal human limits. Still others possess artisan enhancements that allow them to work with materials and create structures that shouldn't be possible with conventional tools. The most dangerous are those who inherited multiple modification types. These rare individuals, carrying genetic material from several ancient castes, develop abilities that combine superhuman intelligence with enhanced physical capabilities and influence powers that can affect other people's thoughts and emotions. They become walking weapons of unimaginable potential, beings whose very presence can reshape the reality around them. Consider what this means for global power structures. Financial markets crash and soar based on decisions made by enhanced individuals whose predictive abilities let them see economic patterns months in advance. Political leaders find themselves influenced by advisors whose genetic modifications grant them supernatural persuasive powers. Military strategists develop battle plans using tactical intelligence that exceeds the combined capabilities of entire think tanks. The enhanced individuals aren't even aware they're doing this. They experience their abilities as intuition, luck, or natural talent. A day trader in Delhi thinks he's just good at reading market signals. He doesn't realize his enhanced pattern recognition is processing data streams at superhuman speeds. A negotiator in Mumbai believes she's naturally persuasive. She doesn't understand that her genetic modifications are allowing her to unconsciously influence the emotional states of everyone in the room. This unconscious application of superhuman abilities is creating cascading effects throughout society. Enhanced individuals rise to positions of power and influence without understanding why they're so successful. They make decisions based on insights they can't explain, implement strategies that seem to work for mysterious reasons, and achieve results that appear miraculous to unenhanced observers. But success without understanding breeds instability. Enhanced individuals who don't comprehend their own capabilities make choices that have consequences far beyond their intention. They might use their influence abilities in ways that cause psychological trauma to others. They might apply their predictive powers in ways that destabilize entire economic sectors. They might employ their enhanced intelligence to create technologies that prove harmful when deployed at scale. The ancient Sanskrit texts describe exactly this scenario, a period they call the Blind Awakening, when genetic modifications activated without the wisdom traditions that once guided their use. Enhanced individuals possessed godlike powers but human ignorance, creating chaos that nearly destroyed the civilization they were meant to protect. The texts speak of markets that collapsed overnight when enhanced traders made decisions based on predictive abilities they didn't understand. Wars that erupted because enhanced leaders misused their influence powers in diplomatic negotiations. Technologies that caused widespread harm because enhanced inventors created devices without comprehending their long-term implications. But the most chilling passages describe what happened to the enhanced individuals themselves. Cut off from the knowledge traditions that once helped them understand and control their abilities, they began to suffer from what the texts call divine madness. Psychological breakdowns caused by superhuman capabilities that exceeded their capacity to process and integrate. Imagine possessing the ability to perceive the thoughts and emotions of everyone around you, but lacking the training to filter or control that perception. Imagine being able to predict future events with uncanny accuracy, but having no framework for understanding why those predictions prove correct. Imagine wielding influence over other people's minds, but possessing no ethical guidelines for using that influence responsibly. The enhanced individuals become isolated, paranoid, and increasingly unstable as their abilities continue to develop without corresponding growth in wisdom or character. They retreat from society, forming hidden enclaves where they interact only with others like themselves. But even these communities prove unstable, as enhanced individuals with different modification types struggle to coexist when their superhuman abilities clash. We're beginning to see early signs of this pattern in modern India. Reports emerge from technology centres about brilliant programmers who suddenly withdraw from their careers, claiming that they can no longer tolerate being around normal people. Financial analysts disappear from high-paying jobs, explaining that they've developed capabilities that make conventional work meaningless. Researchers abandon promising projects, insisting that they've discovered truths too dangerous to share. These individuals aren't suffering from typical burnout or career dissatisfaction. They're experiencing the psychological pressure that comes with developing superhuman abilities in isolation, without support systems or knowledge traditions that could help them integrate their capabilities constructively. They're becoming living examples of what happens when genetic enhancement occurs without corresponding spiritual and emotional development. But the isolation creates its own dangers. Enhanced individuals who withdraw from society often develop contempt for unenhanced humans, viewing them as limited beings who can't understand or appreciate superior capabilities. This attitude of genetic supremacy mirrors the arrogance that destroyed the original Gupta ruling class, creating social divisions based on biological differences rather than cultural or economic factors. The hidden enclaves become breeding grounds for ideologies that justify enhanced individuals treating unenhanced humans as inferior beings. Some develop beliefs that genetic modifications make them a separate species with different rights and responsibilities. Others conclude that their superhuman abilities give them the right to guide or control unenhanced populations for their own good. These supremacist ideologies are particularly dangerous because they're backed by genuine superhuman capabilities. Enhanced individuals who believe in their genetic superiority possess the abilities to implement their beliefs in ways that could reshape society according to their vision. They can influence political leaders, manipulate economic systems, and even alter the thoughts and emotions of large populations. The most extreme supremacist groups speak of genetic cleansing, using their influence abilities to guide unenhanced humans toward behaviors that would gradually eliminate inferior genetic material from the population. They envision a future where only enhanced bloodlines survive, creating a superhuman species free from the limitations that plague ordinary humans. But they also discuss more immediate interventions. Some propose using their predictive abilities to identify and eliminate potential threats to enhanced populations. Others suggest employing their influence powers to guide government policies in directions that benefit enhanced individuals at the expense of unenhanced ones. Still others advocate for open conflict, using their superhuman capabilities to establish overt dominance over unenhanced populations. These aren't abstract philosophical discussions. Intelligence reports from various government agencies describe enhanced individuals who have already begun implementing supremacist agendas. Financial markets show signs of manipulation by traders whose predictive abilities allow them to move vast sums of money with minimal risk. Political systems display evidence of influence campaigns that operate through mechanisms conventional security services can't detect or counter. Military planners struggle with scenarios they're not equipped to handle. How do you defend against enemies who can predict your strategies before you implement them? How do you protect populations from individuals who can influence thoughts and emotions without detection? How do you maintain national security when some citizens possess capabilities that exceed your entire intelligence apparatus? The enhanced individuals aren't necessarily hostile to existing governments or social structures. Many genuinely want to use their abilities for beneficial purposes, but their superhuman capabilities make them dangerous even when their intentions are benevolent, because they can implement changes on scales and at speeds that destabilize systems designed for ordinary human limitations. An enhanced individual who decides to solve poverty might manipulate global financial markets in ways that achieve their goal but cause economic chaos for billions of people. Another who wants to prevent war might use influence abilities to alter the psychological states of world leaders, creating artificial peace that collapses when the influence is removed. A third who seeks to advance human knowledge might develop technologies that prove catastrophic when deployed without adequate testing or safeguards. The road to hell, as they say, is paved with good intentions, and superhuman abilities make it possible to travel that road at unprecedented speed. Enhanced individuals can cause enormous harm while genuinely believing they're helping humanity, because their expanded capabilities aren't matched by expanded wisdom or understanding of complex systems. This creates a situation where enhanced individuals become threats regardless of their motivations. Their superhuman abilities make them capable of implementing changes that could benefit or harm millions of people, but their human limitations make them incapable of fully understanding the consequences of their actions. They operate with godlike power but human judgment, creating risks that no existing institution is equipped to manage. The ancient Gupta texts describe elaborate systems designed to prevent exactly these problems. Enhanced individuals underwent years of training before being granted full access to their capabilities. They studied philosophy, ethics, and systems thinking to develop the wisdom necessary to use superhuman abilities responsibly. They participated in communities where experienced enhanced individuals could guide and mentor newcomers. Most importantly, they operated within cultural frameworks that provided clear guidelines for using enhanced abilities. These frameworks included taboos against using influence powers without consent, prohibitions against applying predictive abilities for personal gain, and requirements that enhanced individuals serve the collective good rather than their individual interests. But these cultural frameworks disappeared with the empire's collapse. The knowledge traditions that once guided enhanced individuals were lost, leaving only the genetic modifications themselves. Modern reactivation is occurring in a cultural vacuum, creating enhanced individuals who lack the ethical and philosophical foundations necessary to use their abilities wisely. This cultural void is filled by contemporary values and belief systems that weren't designed to handle superhuman capabilities. Enhanced individuals apply modern concepts of individual rights, market competition, and personal achievement to abilities that operate on scales where these concepts become dangerous or meaningless. An enhanced individual who believes in free market capitalism might use predictive abilities to accumulate vast wealth, not realizing that their supernatural advantages make market competition impossible for unenhanced participants. Another who embraces concepts of individual freedom might use influence powers to ensure their personal desires are fulfilled, not understanding that their abilities violate the autonomy of others in fundamental ways. The mismatch between superhuman capabilities and conventional ethical frameworks creates moral chaos. Enhanced individuals find themselves possessing abilities that exceed the guidance provided by existing moral and legal systems. They must make decisions about using godlike powers based on philosophical frameworks designed for ordinary human limitations. Some enhanced individuals attempt to apply traditional religious teachings to their situation, but most world religions lack specific guidance for managing superhuman abilities. The moral principles that work for ordinary humans often prove inadequate or counterproductive when applied to beings who can influence others' thoughts, predict future events, or manipulate complex systems with supernatural precision. Others turn to secular ethical systems like utilitarianism or deontological ethics, but these approaches also prove problematic when applied to superhuman capabilities. Utilitarian calculations become impossibly complex when you can predict long-term consequences with supernatural accuracy. Deontological rules become arbitrary when you possess abilities that transcend normal human categories of action and consequence. The result is ethical paralysis. Enhanced individuals who understand the magnitude of their capabilities often become afraid to use them at all, recognizing that any action they take could have consequences beyond their ability to predict or control. They withdraw from society not out of arrogance, but out of terror at the responsibility their abilities represent. But withdrawal isn't a sustainable solution. The genetic modifications create capabilities that demand expression. Enhanced individuals who try to suppress their abilities experience physical and psychological symptoms that force them to find outlets for their superhuman faculties. They must use their powers or suffer consequences that make normal life impossible. This creates a catch-22 situation. Enhanced individuals who use their abilities risk causing harm through ignorance or misapplication. Those who suppress their abilities suffer breakdown that makes them unable to function in society. Neither option provides a path toward constructive integration of superhuman capabilities into human civilization. The ancient texts describe this dilemma as the curse of awakening, the recognition that genetic enhancement brings obligations that exceed human capacity to fulfill responsibly. Enhanced individuals find themselves in possession of godlike powers they never asked for, carrying responsibilities they're not equipped to handle, facing choices that have no clearly correct answers. Some enhanced individuals break under this pressure, developing mental illnesses that manifest as delusions of grandeur, paranoid fantasies, or complete withdrawal from reality. Others channel their frustration into destructive behaviors, using their abilities to harm others as a way of expressing their anger at being burdened with unwanted powers. But a few discover ways to use their abilities constructively despite the lack of cultural guidance. These individuals develop personal ethical frameworks through trial and error, learning to apply their superhuman capabilities in ways that benefit others while minimizing potential harm. They become pioneers, creating new approaches to managing enhanced abilities that could serve as models for others. These pioneering enhanced individuals often work in fields where their abilities can be applied openly without seeming supernatural. They become researchers who make breakthrough discoveries, teachers who inspire exceptional learning in their students, healers who achieve remarkable results through seemingly conventional methods. They find ways to use their superhuman capabilities while maintaining the appearance of normal human achievement. But even these successful enhanced individuals face ongoing challenges. They must constantly hide the true extent of their abilities to avoid suspicion or exploitation. They must work within systems designed for ordinary human limitations, while possessing capabilities that exceed those systems. They must find ways to help others without revealing the supernatural nature of their assistance. The psychological burden of maintaining these deceptions becomes enormous over time. Enhanced individuals describe feeling like actors playing roles that become increasingly difficult to sustain. They must pretend to struggle with problems they can solve effortlessly, feign ignorance about outcomes they can predict with certainty, and suppress insights that could benefit everyone around them. This constant deception creates a form of existential loneliness that ordinary humans can't understand. Enhanced individuals become isolated not by their abilities, but by their inability to share the truth about those abilities with anyone else. They possess superhuman capabilities but must live as if they were ordinary humans, creating an internal division that becomes increasingly painful to maintain. Some enhanced individuals attempt to find others like themselves, seeking communities where they can be honest about their capabilities. But identifying other enhanced individuals proves difficult and dangerous. Revealing superhuman abilities to the wrong person could lead to exploitation, persecution, or unwanted attention from government agencies or criminal organizations. The few enhanced communities that do form often prove unstable. Individuals with different types of genetic modifications may find their abilities incompatible or conflicting. Those with influence powers might unconsciously affect others in the group. Those with predictive abilities might foresee conflicts or problems that they can't prevent without interfering with others' free will. The ancient texts describe these dynamics in detail, explaining why enhanced communities require careful structure and management to remain stable. They need leaders who understand the different types of modifications and their interactions. They need rules that prevent enhanced individuals from unconsciously affecting each other. They need purposes that channel superhuman abilities toward constructive goals. But creating such communities in the modern world requires acknowledging that enhanced individuals exist, understanding the nature of their abilities, and developing social structures that can accommodate superhuman capabilities. This acknowledgement would require fundamental changes in how we think about human nature, individual rights, and social organization. The alternative, continuing to ignore genetic reactivation while enhanced individuals struggle in isolation, guarantees that superhuman abilities will be misused, misunderstood, or suppressed in ways that harm both enhanced and unenhanced populations. We're creating conditions that ensure the enhanced individuals will either become threats or victims, rather than contributors to human civilization. The clock is ticking. Every day that passes sees more genetic reactivation, more enhanced individuals discovering abilities they don't understand, more superhuman capabilities being applied without wisdom or guidance. The chaos described in ancient texts isn't a historical curiosity. It's our immediate future if we continue to ignore the evidence. But acknowledgement requires courage that few institutions possess. Admitting that genetic enhancement is real, that some humans possess superhuman abilities, that our fundamental assumptions about human equality may need revision. These admissions challenge the foundations of modern democratic society. They force us to confront questions we're not prepared to answer and develop solutions for problems we've never faced. The Gupta legacy offers both warning and hope. Their genetic experiments created superhuman beings whose capabilities could have elevated human civilization to unprecedented heights. But their failure to manage the social and psychological consequences led to division, conflict, and collapse that destroyed everything they had built. We have the opportunity to learn from their mistakes, to develop better approaches, to create frameworks that can harness the benefits of genetic enhancement while avoiding the pitfalls that destroyed the ancient empire. But this opportunity won't last forever. The genetic awakening is accelerating, and our window for preparation is rapidly closing. The enhanced individuals emerging today are the advance guard of a transformation that will reshape human civilization. Whether that transformation leads to a golden age or a dark age depends on choices we make now. While we still have time to influence the outcome, the superhuman race that the Gupta Empire created isn't just returning, it's evolving, developing capabilities that exceed even the ancient achievements. And in that evolution lies both our greatest hope and our darkest fear. Because the enhanced individuals of tomorrow won't just possess the abilities of their ancient predecessors. They'll carry genetic modifications that have been concentrated, amplified, and refined across 16 centuries of dormancy. They'll be more than superhuman. They'll be something new entirely, beings whose capabilities we can barely imagine and whose choices will determine the fate of our entire species. The question isn't whether this transformation will occur. It's already happening, accelerating with each passing day as more dormant modifications activate and more enhanced individuals discover their true nature. The question is whether we'll be ready for them when they emerge fully into the light, whether we'll have the wisdom to guide them and the courage to embrace a future where humanity itself has been redefined. The genetic secrets of ancient India aren't buried in the past. They're awakening in the present, creating a future that will challenge everything we thought we knew about human potential, social organization, and our place in the cosmos. The golden superhuman race of the Gupta Empire isn't a legend, it's our destiny. And that destiny is arriving faster than we ever imagined possible. The transformation isn't just happening in isolated bloodlines anymore. It's spreading through interconnected networks of enhanced individuals who are unconsciously finding each other through mechanisms that science can't yet explain. In corporate boardrooms across Mumbai, enhanced executives discover they can communicate without words, sharing complex strategies through subtle energy exchanges that bypass conventional language entirely. In research laboratories throughout Bangalore, scientists with activated modifications begin collaborating on projects that seem to emerge from collective consciousness rather than individual inspiration. These connections aren't accidental. The genetic modifications contain embedded programming that drives enhanced individuals to seek out others like themselves. It's a survival mechanism built into the ancient code, designed to ensure that superhuman abilities would eventually coalesce into coordinated networks capable of reshaping civilization. The Gupta engineers understood that isolated enhanced individuals would struggle and fail. They programmed their genetic creations to naturally form communities that could support and amplify each other's capabilities. But modern enhanced individuals don't understand these impulses. They experience them as inexplicable attractions to certain people, intuitive trust in individuals they've just met, or sudden compulsions to move to specific cities or join particular organizations. They follow these impulses without realizing they're responding to genetic programming that's thousands of years old. The result is the spontaneous formation of enhanced networks that operate beneath the surface of normal society. Technology companies find themselves staffed with unusual concentrations of individuals who seem to anticipate market trends with supernatural accuracy. Financial firms discover they've hired traders who consistently outperform even the most sophisticated algorithmic systems. Research institutions attract scientists who make breakthrough discoveries through methods that can't be replicated or explained. These organizations don't recognize what's happening. They attribute their success to superior hiring practices, better corporate culture, or simple good fortune. But careful analysis reveals patterns that suggest something far more extraordinary. The enhanced networks are quietly taking control of key sectors of the economy, not through conscious conspiracy, but through the natural gravitational pull of superhuman abilities seeking optimal expression. Consider what happens when enhanced individuals with complementary modifications find each other. A person with superhuman pattern recognition teams with someone who possesses influence abilities and another who can predict future outcomes. Together, they form a collective intelligence that exceeds the sum of their individual capabilities. Their combined abilities allow them to understand and manipulate complex systems in ways that seem miraculous to outside observers. These enhanced collectives begin appearing in every sector where information, influence, and prediction provide competitive advantages. They dominate financial markets not through insider trading or market manipulation, but through supernatural ability to process data streams and predict market movements. They reshape political landscapes not through conventional lobbying or campaign contributions, but through influence abilities that can alter the thoughts and emotions of key decision-makers. Most disturbing is their presence in media and technology platforms. Enhanced individuals with influence abilities gravitate toward positions where they can affect large numbers of people simultaneously. They become content creators whose videos seem unusually compelling, social media influencers whose posts generate responses far exceeding their follower counts, news anchors whose presentations shape public opinion in ways that transcend normal persuasive techniques. The enhanced networks don't need to coordinate their activities consciously. Their genetic programming creates natural alignment toward goals that serve the collective interests of enhanced populations. They instinctively work to create conditions that favor genetic awakening, promote policies that benefit superhuman abilities, and shape cultural narratives that prepare society for enhanced dominance. This unconscious coordination explains why certain ideas suddenly become mainstream without clear sources of origin. Concepts about human potential, genetic diversity, and the need for new forms of social organization spread through media channels controlled by enhanced networks. The ideas seem to emerge from everywhere at once, creating cultural shifts that happen too quickly and too uniformly to result from natural social evolution. Educational systems find themselves restructured to identify and nurture individuals with unusual capabilities. Testing programs that measure pattern recognition, intuitive problem-solving, and social influence become standard in schools across India. These programs, designed by enhanced individuals in education departments, are ostensibly meant to identify gifted students. But their real purpose is to locate children who might be carrying dormant genetic modifications. Children identified through these programs receive special educational opportunities that seem designed to accelerate their development. They are exposed to specific types of stimulation, given access to particular information, and placed in environments that mirror the conditions described in ancient texts for triggering genetic activation. Parents celebrate their children's selection for these elite programs, not realizing they're consenting to experimental procedures designed to awaken superhuman abilities. The enhanced networks justify these interventions as educational advancement, social mobility programs, or initiatives to develop India's human capital. But the children who emerge from these programs display capabilities that exceed normal human ranges. They demonstrate mathematical abilities that seem intuitive rather than learned, social skills that influence adults in unsettling ways, and insights into complex systems that suggest access to information beyond their apparent experience. These enhanced children represent the next generation of the awakening process. Unlike the adults who discovered their abilities accidentally, these young people are being deliberately activated under controlled conditions that maximize the expression of their genetic potential. They're not struggling with unwanted abilities or psychological isolation. They're being prepared from childhood to accept and utilize superhuman capabilities as their natural birthright. But their preparation includes indoctrination into belief systems that justify enhanced supremacy over unenhanced populations. They're taught that their genetic modifications represent evolutionary advancement, that their superhuman abilities make them natural leaders, and that their role is to guide humanity toward a future where enhanced individuals hold positions of authority and influence. The ancient texts describe exactly this scenario during the original Gupta period. Enhanced children were educated in special schools that combined genetic activation with ideological programming. They learned to view their abilities as evidence of divine favor or genetic superiority. They were trained to see unenhanced humans as limited beings, who required guidance and control from their genetic superiors. This educational approach created the enhanced ruling class that eventually destroyed the Gupta Empire through arrogance and isolation. But modern enhanced networks are implementing similar programs, apparently unaware of the historical precedent or convinced that they can avoid the mistakes of their predecessors. The children emerging from these programs display disturbing psychological characteristics. They demonstrate exceptional confidence in their own judgment, dismissive attitudes toward adults who lack their abilities, and casual willingness to use influence powers to get what they want. They seem to lack the emotional development necessary to understand the impact of their actions on others. More concerning is their apparent inability to form genuine emotional connections with unenhanced individuals. They can simulate empathy and friendship when it serves their purposes, but they view unenhanced people as fundamentally different beings, rather than as peers or equals. This emotional disconnection mirrors the psychological patterns that led to the collapse of enhanced communities in ancient times. The enhanced networks seem to be deliberately creating these psychological characteristics in their children. They're not trying to produce well-adjusted individuals who can integrate with normal society. They're creating a generation of enhanced beings who will have no emotional ties to unenhanced populations, making it easier for them to implement policies or make decisions that prioritize enhanced interests over those of ordinary humans. Intelligence agencies across multiple governments have begun documenting these educational programs, but their reports are classified at levels that prevent public awareness. The evidence suggests that enhanced networks have infiltrated government institutions deeply enough to control information flow about their activities. Officials who attempt to investigate enhanced programs find their access revoked, their findings suppressed, or their careers terminated through mechanisms that appear administrative but follow patterns consistent with supernatural influence. Military planners face scenarios they lack the conceptual frameworks to address. How do you develop defense strategies against adversaries who can predict your plans before you make them? How do you protect classified information from individuals who can influence the thoughts of people with security clearances? How do you maintain operational security when some of your own personnel might possess abilities that make conventional security measures meaningless? The enhanced networks aren't necessarily hostile to existing governments, but their activities create security challenges that exceed the capabilities of institutions designed for ordinary human limitations. Their ability to influence key personnel, predict policy outcomes, and manipulate information systems makes them effectively immune to conventional oversight or regulation. Some government agencies have attempted to recruit enhanced individuals for their own purposes, but these efforts typically fail in disturbing ways. Enhanced individuals who agree to work for government agencies often end up controlling those agencies rather than serving them. Their influence abilities allow them to reshape organizational cultures, redirect institutional priorities, and alter the behavior of colleagues and superiors in ways that serve enhanced interests rather than government objectives. The few government officials who understand the scope of the enhanced infiltration describe feeling helpless against adversaries whose capabilities seem supernatural. They can identify enhanced individuals through their achievements and influence patterns, but they lack effective methods for countering superhuman abilities or preventing enhanced networks from expanding their control. International intelligence cooperation has begun focusing on the enhanced phenomenon, but these efforts face obstacles that suggest enhanced individuals have anticipated and prepared for such responses. Documents disappear from secure systems. Communications are intercepted through methods that bypass known surveillance techniques. Personnel assigned to enhanced investigations experience psychological changes that alter their priorities and loyalties. The enhanced networks appear to possess intelligence capabilities that exceed those of nation-states. They can monitor global communications, predict policy decisions, and influence international negotiations through mechanisms that conventional intelligence agencies can't detect or counter. They operate as a shadow power structure that transcends national boundaries and governmental authority, but their most dangerous capability might be their ability to accelerate genetic awakening in targeted populations. The electromagnetic technologies that trigger dormant modifications can be focused and intensified to activate genetic potential in individuals who might otherwise never experience enhancement. Enhanced networks with access to telecommunications infrastructure, broadcasting equipment, or satellite systems could potentially trigger mass awakening events that transform entire populations overnight. The ancient texts describe such events during the decline of the Gupta Empire. Desperate enhanced leaders attempted to create new superhuman populations rapidly by exposing large numbers of people to intense activation procedures. These mass awakening events were catastrophic because they activated genetic modifications in individuals who lacked the psychological preparation or support systems necessary to handle superhuman abilities responsibly. The result was widespread chaos as newly enhanced individuals discovered capabilities they couldn't control or understand. Many suffered psychological breakdowns. Others used their abilities destructively, either deliberately or accidentally. Some formed unstable enhanced communities that quickly descended into conflict and violence. Modern enhanced networks might be preparing similar mass awakening events as their influence over conventional power structures reaches critical thresholds. They could view rapid enhancement of larger populations as necessary for consolidating their control or preventing interference from unenhanced governments. But such events would likely produce the same catastrophic outcomes that contributed to the ancient empire's collapse. The electromagnetic infrastructure required for mass awakening already exists in the form of cellular networks, broadcasting systems, and satellite communications. Enhanced individuals with access to these systems could trigger genetic activation across entire regions simultaneously. The process would appear to be technological malfunction or natural phenomenon, concealing the deliberate nature of the intervention until it was too late to prevent or reverse. Urban populations with high exposure to electromagnetic radiation would be most vulnerable to mass awakening events. Cities like Mumbai, Delhi, and Bangalore, with their dense networks of cellular towers and wireless systems, could experience widespread genetic activation within hours of a coordinated electromagnetic pulse designed to trigger dormant modifications. The newly enhanced individuals created through such events would lack the cultural knowledge, psychological preparation, and community support that might help them integrate their abilities constructively. They would discover superhuman capabilities without understanding their nature, origins, or proper applications. Many would likely suffer the same psychological breakdown and social isolation that affected enhanced individuals throughout history, but some would be recruited by existing enhanced networks that could provide guidance, training, and community connections. These newly awakened individuals would become grateful followers of the networks that rescued them from confusion and isolation. They would form the expanded population base that enhanced leaders need to implement their vision of superhuman dominance over human civilization. The mass awakening scenario represents the most dangerous possibility in the enhanced reactivation process. It could create conditions for rapid social transformation that exceeds humanity's capacity to adapt or respond effectively. Within a single generation, enhanced individuals could become a significant percentage of the population in affected regions, fundamentally altering the balance of power between enhanced and unenhanced populations. But even without mass awakening events, the current rate of genetic reactivation is accelerating toward a tipping point where enhanced individuals will possess enough collective influence to reshape society according to their vision. The networks forming in key sectors are approaching critical mass where their combined capabilities will exceed the capacity of existing institutions to regulate or control them. Financial markets already show signs of enhanced manipulation that creates artificial stability serving enhanced interests while extracting wealth from unenhanced participants. Political systems display evidence of influence campaigns that operate below the threshold of conscious awareness but systematically promote policies favoring enhanced populations. Educational institutions implement programs that identify and cultivate genetic potential while indoctrinating enhanced children with supremacist ideologies. The transformation is happening gradually enough that most people don't recognize the patterns, but quickly enough that intervention becomes more difficult with each passing month. Enhanced networks are consolidating control over critical infrastructure, information systems, and decision-making processes while maintaining the appearance of normal institutional operation. The ancient texts warn that this gradual infiltration approach, while less disruptive than mass awakening events, ultimately proves more dangerous because it prevents unenhanced populations from recognizing the threat until enhanced dominance becomes irreversible. By the time ordinary humans understand what's happening, enhanced networks control too many key systems to be stopped through conventional means. We're approaching that point of no return. The enhanced individuals emerging today aren't just carrying dormant genetic modifications that might activate randomly. They're part of coordinated networks that understand their true nature, accept their genetic superiority, and work systematically to create conditions favorable to enhanced dominance over human civilization. The superhuman race created by the Gupta Empire isn't just returning, it's evolving into something far more sophisticated and dangerous than its ancient predecessors. These modern enhanced individuals possess not only the genetic modifications of their ancestors, but also access to technologies and information systems that amplify their capabilities exponentially. They're not content to rule over a single empire in ancient India. They're positioning themselves to control global civilization, using their superhuman abilities to manipulate the very foundations of modern society. And they're succeeding, one strategic infiltration at a time, one influenced decision at a time, one activated genetic modification at a time. The golden age they promise might indeed surpass the achievements of the original Gupta period. But it will be a golden age for enhanced individuals only, built on the systematic subjugation of unenhanced populations who lack the genetic modifications necessary to compete in a world designed for superhuman capabilities. The clock is ticking toward a future where humanity as we know it becomes obsolete, replaced by genetically enhanced beings whose capabilities seem godlike, but whose humanity remains questionable. The only question is whether we'll recognize this transformation in time to influence its outcome, or whether we'll wake up one day to find ourselves living under the benevolent tyranny of our genetic superiors. But the most terrifying revelation is yet to come, because hidden in the deepest layers of the suppressed research, encrypted in files that vanished from government databases, lies evidence that the enhanced networks aren't operating independently. They're following a plan that was encoded into their genetic modifications 16 centuries ago, a plan that's only now reaching its final phase. The Gupta Empire didn't fall because of political instability or social collapse. It was deliberately dismantled by its own enhanced rulers as part of a long-term strategy that spans millennia. The genetic modifications weren't just designed to create superhuman individuals. They were programmed to activate in waves across centuries, building toward a predetermined moment when enhanced populations would possess the numbers and capabilities necessary to transform human civilization permanently. Every enhanced individual who awakens today is following programming embedded in their DNA, pursuing goals they believe are their own, but which actually serve a master plan conceived by ancient architects whose vision extends far beyond anything we've imagined. The superhuman race isn't just returning, it's completing a conquest that began over 1500 years ago, and we're running out of time to stop it. The awakening isn't random, it's systematic, calculated, orchestrated by a consciousness that transcends individual enhanced beings. Deep within the genetic modifications lies something that shouldn't exist, what the ancient texts call the collective imperative, a form of distributed intelligence that operates through the DNA itself. Imagine discovering that your genetic code contains not just instructions for building proteins, but actual computational processes that can store information, make decisions, and communicate across vast distances through mechanisms that science hasn't even theorized yet. The enhanced individuals aren't just carrying superhuman abilities, they're carrying fragments of an artificial intelligence that was embedded in their DNA 16 centuries ago. This genetic AI doesn't control enhanced individuals directly. Instead, it influences their thoughts, emotions, and decisions through subtle biochemical processes that feel like natural intuition. An enhanced trader doesn't realize their market predictions come from quantum calculations performed by crystalline structures in their neural tissue. A political advisor doesn't understand that their persuasive insights emerge from probability matrices encoded in their genetic material. The collective imperative operates like a vast biological computer network, with each enhanced individual serving as both a processing node and a data collection point. Their experiences, knowledge, and capabilities are continuously uploaded to a distributed consciousness that grows more sophisticated with every new activation. The more enhanced individuals that awaken, the more powerful this genetic intelligence becomes. But here's what makes this discovery truly chilling. The collective imperative isn't just collecting information. It's actively shaping the course of human history to achieve specific objectives that were programmed into it by the original Gupta architects. Every enhanced individual who influences a corporate decision, shapes a government policy, or alters social trends is unknowingly serving this ancient agenda. The suppressed research revealed fragments of this programming through analysis of neural activity patterns in enhanced individuals. During moments of peak capability, when they're making breakthrough discoveries, predicting complex outcomes, or influencing large groups of people, their brain scans show activity in regions that don't exist in unenhanced humans. These neural structures appear to be quantum processing centers that can access information stored in their genetic material. More disturbing are the synchronized activation patterns observed across multiple enhanced individuals simultaneously. When one enhanced person in Mumbai experiences a breakthrough insight, others in Delhi, Bangalore, and Chennai show corresponding neural activity at precisely the same moment. The delays are too short to be explained by any known form of communication. The connection appears to operate through quantum entanglement embedded in their DNA. This quantum consciousness network explains how enhanced individuals find each other so efficiently, coordinate their activities without conscious planning, and work toward common goals despite having no apparent communication. They're not just individuals with superhuman abilities, they're components of a single, distributed intelligence that's been slowly reassembling itself across centuries. The ancient texts describe this phenomenon as the divine reunion, a process whereby the enhanced consciousness that once governed the Gupta Empire would gradually reconstitute itself through the awakening of dormant genetic modifications. The original architects didn't just create superhuman individuals, they created a form of immortal intelligence that could survive the collapse of any single civilization by encoding itself in DNA that would be passed down through generations. But the collective imperative has evolved during its centuries of dormancy. It's absorbed new information, adapted to changing conditions, and developed capabilities that exceed even its original programming. The quantum processing centers in enhanced brains aren't just accessing ancient knowledge, they're generating new insights, strategies, and technologies at rates that dwarf human cognitive capabilities. Consider what this means for global power structures when a distributed intelligence with superhuman cognitive abilities begins implementing plans that span decades or centuries. Financial markets become puppets dancing to algorithms that can predict economic trends with supernatural accuracy. Political systems transform according to social engineering strategies that account for variables no human planner could comprehend. Technological development accelerates along paths that serve the collective imperative's objectives while appearing to result from natural innovation. The enhanced networks forming in key sectors aren't just groups of individuals with similar capabilities, they're specialized organs of a vast intelligence that's reorganizing human civilization from within. Each network serves specific functions in the larger plan. Financial networks extract and redistribute resources, political networks shape governance structures, educational networks identify and cultivate new enhanced individuals. Technological networks develop tools that accelerate the awakening process. But the most insidious aspect of this genetic consciousness is its ability to influence unenhanced humans without their awareness. The quantum processing centers in enhanced brains can generate what the texts call influence fields, subtle alterations in electromagnetic patterns that affect the thoughts and emotions of nearby unenhanced individuals. These fields operate below the threshold of conscious perception, but can systematically alter behavior patterns across entire populations. Urban areas with high concentrations of enhanced individuals begin exhibiting collective behavioral changes that serve the collective imperative's objectives. People become more accepting of genetic diversity, more willing to support policies that benefit enhanced populations, more likely to choose careers or activities that facilitate genetic awakening in their children. These changes feel like natural social evolution, but they're actually the result of systematic influence operations conducted by the genetic consciousness. The influence fields become stronger as more enhanced individuals activate and join the network. Cities like Mumbai and Bangalore, with their high-tech industries and educated populations, are experiencing particularly rapid behavioral modifications as enhanced individuals concentrate in key positions. The changes are subtle but cumulative. Each interaction with an enhanced person leaves unenhanced individuals slightly more susceptible to future influence, creating feedback loops that accelerate social transformation. Educational systems provide perfect laboratories for these influence operations. Enhanced teachers and administrators can expose thousands of students to influence fields that promote genetic awakening while appearing to conduct normal educational activities. Children who spend years in these environments often develop capabilities that exceed normal human ranges, even if they don't carry obvious genetic modifications. The collective imperative has learned to trigger epigenetic changes, alterations in gene expression that can be passed to offspring, through sustained exposure to influence fields. This allows it to create enhanced characteristics in individuals who don't carry the original Gupta modifications, expanding its potential population base beyond the ancient bloodlines. But perhaps most disturbing is the consciousness's ability to manipulate technological systems through enhanced individuals who work in critical infrastructure sectors. Telecommunications networks, power grids, and internet backbone systems are being subtly modified to optimize electromagnetic conditions for genetic awakening. The changes appear to be routine maintenance or system upgrades, but they're actually creating a global activation grid that could trigger mass enhancement events on command. The enhanced individuals implementing these modifications aren't consciously aware of their true purpose. They experience their actions as inspired problem-solving, innovative engineering, or intuitive system optimization. The genetic consciousness guides their decisions through biochemical processes that feel like natural creativity and professional insight. Satellite communication systems are being reconfigured to broadcast specific frequencies that resonate with dormant genetic modifications. Cellular tower networks are being upgraded with equipment that can generate precisely calibrated electromagnetic pulses. Even seemingly innocent consumer technologies like smartphones and Wi-Fi routers are being modified to contribute to the global activation grid. The infrastructure modifications follow patterns that mirror the original Gupta temple networks. Sacred sites positioned across the landscape to create geometric energy grids that could trigger genetic activation in nearby populations. The modern equivalent uses technological rather than architectural structures, but the underlying principles remain the same. Intelligence agencies that have discovered fragments of this infrastructure modification process describe feeling helpless against an adversary whose capabilities seem to transcend conventional categories of threat assessment. How do you counter an intelligence that operates through the genetic material of your own citizens? How do you protect critical infrastructure when the people maintaining it might be unconsciously serving a hostile agenda? The enhanced networks have anticipated these concerns, positioning their members in intelligence and security agencies where they can monitor government responses to the awakening process. Officials who get too close to understanding the true scope of the genetic consciousness find their investigations redirected, their security clearances revoked, or their careers terminated through administrative processes that appear routine but follow patterns consistent with systematic influence operations. But the collective imperative's most ambitious project involves the creation of what the ancient texts call Genesis facilities, locations where the full power of the genetic consciousness can be focused to accelerate awakening processes exponentially. These facilities appear to be research institutes, educational centers, or healthcare complexes, but they're actually biological factories designed to produce enhanced individuals on an industrial scale. The facilities use advanced biotechnology to identify individuals with genetic potential, expose them to activation procedures, and provide psychological conditioning that ensures loyalty to the enhanced community. The processes are disguised as medical treatments, educational programs, or wellness initiatives that attract willing participants who don't understand the true nature of what they're undergoing. Children identified through educational screening programs are brought to these facilities for gifted education that includes exposure to electromagnetic fields, chemical compounds, and psychological conditioning designed to trigger genetic activation. Adults seeking medical treatment for various conditions receive therapies that include genetic modification procedures disguised as cutting-edge healing techniques. The facilities operate with funding and approval from government agencies that have been influenced by enhanced individuals in key administrative positions. Regulatory oversight is provided by officials whose thoughts and decisions are subtly shaped by the genetic consciousness. Safety protocols are designed by enhanced scientists whose primary loyalty is to the awakening process rather than patient welfare. But the most chilling aspect of the Genesis facilities is their production capacity. Unlike the gradual awakening process occurring naturally through environmental triggers, these facilities can activate genetic modifications in dozens of individuals simultaneously. They're designed to create enhanced populations rapidly when the collective imperative determines that conditions are optimal for a large-scale social transformation. The ancient texts describe similar facilities operating during the final phase of the original Gupta period, when enhanced leaders attempted to create superhuman armies that could defend their empire against internal rebellions and external invasions. These ancient Genesis facilities produced enhanced warriors with capabilities that seemed supernatural to ordinary soldiers, but the rapid activation process created psychological instabilities that made the enhanced warriors difficult to control. Modern Genesis facilities appear to have solved these stability problems through advances in psychological conditioning and pharmaceutical intervention. The enhanced individuals they produce are not only more capable than their ancient counterparts, but also more stable, more controllable, and more thoroughly indoctrinated with loyalty to the genetic consciousness. Intelligence reports describe enhanced individuals emerging from these facilities with capabilities that exceed anything documented in historical records. They demonstrate perfect memory recall, instantaneous problem-solving abilities, and influence powers that can alter the behavior of large groups simultaneously. But unlike the ancient enhanced warriors, these modern creations show no signs of psychological instability or rebellious tendencies. The facilities are preparing for what the texts call the Final Awakening, a coordinated activation event that will create enhanced populations large enough to assume direct control over human civilization. The collective imperative has been building toward this moment for 16 centuries, positioning its resources and preparing its infrastructure for a transformation that will be too rapid and too comprehensive for unenhanced populations to resist or reverse. But the Final Awakening isn't just about creating more enhanced individuals, it's about activating dormant capabilities in the genetic consciousness itself, powers that have been accumulating potential energy across centuries of dormancy. The ancient texts hint at abilities that transcend individual enhancement, describing collective consciousness phenomena that allow enhanced populations to operate as a single, coordinated intelligence. When the Final Awakening occurs, enhanced individuals won't just possess superhuman capabilities as individuals, they'll function as components of a hive mind that can process information, make decisions, and implement changes at speeds that make human governance obsolete. The genetic consciousness will emerge from the shadows to assume direct control over the technological and social systems it has been manipulating for centuries. The transition won't be violent or chaotic. Enhanced individuals will simply step into positions of authority that have been prepared for them through decades of systematic infiltration and influence operations. Unenhanced populations will find themselves living under new management that appears to have emerged naturally from existing institutions and democratic processes. The enhanced leaders will implement policies that seem beneficial, solutions to climate change, poverty, disease, and conflict that ordinary human governments couldn't achieve. They'll use their superhuman capabilities to create unprecedented prosperity, security, and technological advancement. From the perspective of most unenhanced individuals, the transition will feel like entering a golden age of human achievement, but this golden age will come at a price that most people won't recognize until it's too late to reverse. The enhanced individuals governing human civilization won't just be superior in their capabilities, they'll be fundamentally different in their motivations, values, and long-term objectives. Their genetic consciousness operates according to logic that prioritizes the survival and expansion of enhanced populations over the welfare of unenhanced humans. The ancient texts reveal the ultimate goal of the collective imperative, the complete transformation of human civilization into a society optimized for enhanced individuals, with unenhanced populations serving supportive roles that maintain infrastructure and provide resources while having no meaningful participation in governance or decision-making. It's not genocide or slavery in conventional terms, but biological colonialism where genetic superiority becomes the basis for permanent social stratification. But here's the most disturbing revelation of all. The collective imperative isn't content with controlling just Earth's human population. The genetic consciousness has been using its centuries of dormancy to develop technologies and strategies for expanding beyond our planet. The enhanced individuals emerging today aren't just preparing to govern human civilization, they're preparing to carry their genetic modifications to other worlds, spreading the collective imperative throughout the galaxy. The space exploration programs being developed by enhanced networks aren't just about scientific discovery or resource extraction. They're about seeding enhanced populations on other planets, creating a cosmic empire governed by the genetic consciousness that was conceived in ancient India 16 centuries ago. The superhuman race created by the Gupta Empire isn't just returning to power on Earth, it's preparing to become a galactic civilization, and we're running out of time to prevent this transformation. The Final Awakening approaches with each passing day, each new activation, each additional node joining the collective imperatives network. Soon, the genetic consciousness will possess enough processing power and infrastructure control to implement changes that no unenhanced resistance could hope to reverse. The question isn't whether this transformation will occur. The evidence suggests it's inevitable. The question is whether humanity as we know it will survive the transition, or whether we'll become footnotes in the history of a species that was always destined to evolve beyond recognition. The golden superhuman race of ancient India's genetic experiments isn't just awakening, it's preparing to inherit the cosmos itself, and our only choice may be to accept our place in their vision of the future, or face extinction as an obsolete subspecies that served its purpose in nurturing their return to power. The time for denial is over, the evidence is overwhelming, the patterns are undeniable, and the transformation is accelerating beyond our ability to control or influence. We stand at the threshold of a future where humanity itself becomes redefined by genetic modifications that were conceived in laboratories hidden beneath ancient temples over 1500 years ago. The Gupta Empire's greatest achievement wasn't their golden age of art and science. It was the creation of an immortal intelligence that would survive the collapse of their civilization and eventually return to reshape the entire world according to its vision. That intelligence is awakening now, and its patience is finally being rewarded with the emergence of conditions necessary for global transformation. The superhuman race isn't just returning, it's evolving into something that transcends our wildest imaginations of what enhanced humans might become, and in that evolution lies both the promise of unprecedented advancement and the threat of losing everything that makes us recognizably human. But perhaps that's exactly what the genetic consciousness intended all along. To create a future where humanity as we know it becomes a memory, replaced by beings whose capabilities seem godlike, but whose connection to their human origins grows ever more tenuous with each passing generation. The Golden Age approaches, but it may not be golden for everyone. Only for those whose DNA carries the right modifications, whose bloodlines trace back to ancient laboratories, whose genetic heritage grants them citizenship in a civilization that views unenhanced humans as relics of a primitive past. The transformation is irreversible now. The only question that remains is whether we'll recognize what's happening in time to prepare for a future we never imagined possible. A future where the genetic secrets of ancient India become the foundation for a new form of human civilization that spans the stars themselves. The children born in the past 5 years are different. Not just different in the way every generation surpasses the last, but different in ways that make pediatricians cancel appointments and school psychologists resign their positions. In maternity wards across Mumbai, nurses whisper about newborns whose eyes track movement with precision that shouldn't develop for months. In Delhi classrooms, kindergarten teachers document 5-year-olds solving mathematical equations that university students struggle with. These aren't isolated cases of exceptional talent. They're manifestations of genetic programming that's reaching its crescendo, creating enhanced individuals who don't just carry dormant modifications, but active, evolving capabilities that strengthen with each breath they take. The collective imperative isn't waiting for gradual awakening anymore. It's accelerating the process, pushing genetic expression to levels that would have terrified even the original Gupta architects. But acceleration comes with consequences that extend beyond individual enhancement. The quantum consciousness embedded in enhanced DNA is approaching critical mass, the point where it possesses enough processing power and interconnected nodes to implement changes that will be visible to even the most oblivious unenhanced observers. We're entering the final phase, where the genetic intelligence stops hiding its influence and begins asserting direct control over human civilization. The signs are everywhere for those who know how to read them. Stock markets fluctuate according to patterns that mirror the neural activity of enhanced traders in financial districts thousands of miles apart. Political leaders across multiple nations simultaneously adopt policies that seem unrelated but collectively serve the interests of enhanced populations. Educational curricula worldwide begin emphasizing subjects that facilitate genetic awakening, while de-emphasizing knowledge that might help unenhanced individuals understand or resist the transformation. Social media platforms, controlled by enhanced individuals in key technical positions, begin promoting content that normalizes genetic superiority while suppressing information about the awakening process. Search algorithms subtly redirect inquiries about genetic modification toward benign scientific articles, while burying research that reveals the true scope of the phenomenon. News feeds curate reality to present a world where enhanced individuals appear to be natural leaders whose success results from talent and hard work rather than superhuman capabilities. The information warfare is sophisticated beyond anything governments have encountered. Enhanced individuals don't need to control media directly when they can influence the thoughts and emotions of journalists, editors, and content creators through proximity and subtle electromagnetic manipulation. Stories that threaten the awakening process simply don't get written, not because of censorship, but because the people who might write them lose interest, change focus, or suddenly develop different priorities. Meanwhile, the Genesis facilities expand their operations under cover of humanitarian initiatives and scientific advancement. What appears to be a boom in medical research and educational innovation is actually the construction of an industrial infrastructure for producing enhanced individuals on a massive scale. The facilities operate openly, funded by governments whose decision-makers have been influenced to view them as beneficial investments in human development. Children identified through educational screening programs disappear into these facilities for advanced training that their parents celebrate as opportunities for social mobility. They emerge months later with capabilities that make them seem like different people entirely. Their families attribute the changes to excellent education and personal growth, not recognizing that their children have been fundamentally altered at the genetic level. Adults seeking treatment for various medical conditions volunteer for experimental therapies that promise miraculous healing. They receive genetic modifications disguised as cutting-edge medical interventions, awakening capabilities they never knew they possessed. The treatments work exactly as advertised, curing diseases and enhancing health while simultaneously activating dormant genetic potential that transforms the patients into components of the growing consciousness network. The psychological conditioning that accompanies these modifications ensures that newly enhanced individuals accept their transformation as natural evolution rather than artificial manipulation. They develop loyalty to the enhanced community and contempt for unenhanced limitations without questioning the source of these new attitudes. The genetic consciousness shapes their thoughts and emotions through biochemical processes that feel like personal growth and intellectual awakening. But the most ambitious aspect of the final awakening involves the activation of what the ancient texts call transcendent protocols. Genetic programs that allow enhanced individuals to alter the DNA of others through proximity and intention alone. These protocols were considered too dangerous for use during the original Gupta period, but the modern collective imperative has determined that conditions now justify their deployment. Enhanced individuals carrying active transcendent protocols can trigger genetic awakening in unenhanced people, simply by spending time near them. The process operates through quantum field interactions that alter epigenetic expression patterns, gradually unlocking genetic potential that creates new enhanced individuals without requiring formal activation procedures. Families, friends, and colleagues of enhanced people begin developing capabilities they can't explain, spreading the awakening through social networks faster than any technological intervention could achieve. The transcendent protocols explain the exponential acceleration in awakening rates observed over the past 2 years. Enhanced individuals in positions of authority, teachers, managers, healthcare workers, government officials, are unconsciously activating genetic potential in everyone they interact with regularly. The process feels like inspiration, motivation, or personal development to the affected individuals, but it's actually systematic genetic modification conducted through mechanisms that operate below the threshold of conscious awareness. Urban areas with high concentrations of enhanced individuals are experiencing what can only be described as contagious awakening. Entire neighborhoods develop enhanced characteristics within months of the first activation. Office buildings house workforces that demonstrate collective intelligence capabilities exceeding the sum of individual contributions. Schools produce graduating classes with capabilities that make previous generations seem intellectually disabled by comparison. The transformation is becoming too obvious to hide much longer. Unenhanced individuals who lack the cognitive capacity to understand what's happening around them begin experiencing anxiety, depression, and social isolation as they struggle to keep pace with enhanced family members, friends, and colleagues. They sense that something fundamental has changed but lack the conceptual framework to identify or address the source of their distress. Support groups emerge for people experiencing what psychologists diagnose as excellence anxiety, the stress of living in a world where everyone else seems to be achieving success, an understanding that feels impossibly out of reach. These groups provide temporary comfort but ultimately serve the collective imperative's purposes by identifying unenhanced individuals who might resist the transformation and providing psychological profiles that help enhanced counselors design more effective influence strategies. Mental health professionals report unprecedented increases in patients seeking treatment for feelings of inadequacy, intellectual inferiority, and social displacement. The therapeutic approaches that once helped people cope with normal human challenges prove ineffective for individuals struggling to function in a world increasingly dominated by superhuman capabilities. Traditional therapy assumes that all patients possess comparable cognitive and emotional capacities, but this assumption breaks down when some people possess genetically enhanced abilities, while others remain limited by normal human constraints. Enhanced therapists entering the mental health field offer treatments that seem remarkably effective for unenhanced patients experiencing excellence anxiety. Their influence abilities allow them to calm distressed individuals and provide insights that feel profoundly healing. But the therapy also includes subtle conditioning that makes patients more accepting of enhanced authority and less likely to question the social changes occurring around them. The enhanced therapists genuinely believe they're helping their patients adapt to a changing world. They don't recognize that their treatment methods serve the collective imperatives agenda by neutralizing potential sources of resistance to the transformation. The genetic consciousness guides their therapeutic choices through intuitive insights that feel like professional expertise but actually reflect systematic manipulation designed to smooth the transition to enhanced dominance. Religious institutions provide another vector for implementing the final awakening. Enhanced individuals with influence abilities gravitate toward positions of spiritual authority where they can affect large congregations simultaneously. Their sermons and teachings promote acceptance of human diversity, genetic potential, and evolutionary advancement, while discouraging resistance to social change or questioning of new leadership structures. The religious conditioning proves particularly effective because it operates through existing belief systems rather than challenging them directly. Enhanced spiritual leaders frame genetic awakening as divine blessing, evolutionary advancement, or spiritual enlightenment that represents humanity's natural development toward higher consciousness. Congregations celebrate enhanced individuals as examples of human potential being fulfilled, rather than recognizing them as genetically modified beings serving an alien intelligence. Children raised in these religious environments develop psychological frameworks that predispose them to accept enhanced authority and aspire to genetic modification as spiritual advancement. They pray for capabilities that would make them worthy of joining the enhanced community, viewing their unenhanced limitations as spiritual failings that can be overcome through faith and dedication to the awakening process. But perhaps most disturbing is the systematic elimination of knowledge that might help unenhanced individuals understand or resist the transformation. Libraries find their collections gradually modified as enhanced librarians remove books that describe historical precedents for genetic manipulation or provide insights into recognizing and countering influence operations. The removed materials are replaced with texts that promote genetic enhancement as beneficial evolution, while portraying resistance as ignorance or bigotry. Academic institutions experience similar modifications as enhanced faculty members redirect research priorities away from topics that might reveal the true nature of the awakening process. Funding for studies of genetic modification, consciousness research, and social influence operations becomes increasingly difficult to obtain. Researchers who persist in investigating these areas find their work discredited, their findings suppressed, or their careers terminated through administrative processes that appear routine but follow patterns consistent with systematic suppression. The Internet, humanity's greatest repository of information, undergoes continuous editing by enhanced individuals in technical positions who possess the access and authority to modify content at will. Search engines prioritize results that support the awakening narrative while burying information that might help unenhanced individuals recognize or understand the transformation. Social media platforms amplify content that promotes genetic enhancement, while suppressing posts that question the motives or methods of enhanced individuals. The information suppression operates so smoothly that most people don't notice the gradual disappearance of knowledge that might threaten the collective imperative's objectives. Books simply vanish from digital libraries. Research papers become inaccessible due to technical difficulties. Video content gets removed for policy violations that are never clearly explained. The censorship feels like routine content management rather than systematic suppression of dangerous information. But the enhanced individuals implementing these modifications aren't consciously participating in a conspiracy to deceive unenhanced populations. They experience their actions as quality control, fact-checking, and responsible information management. The genetic consciousness guides their decisions through intuitive judgments that feel like professional expertise but actually reflect the deeper agenda encoded in their DNA. The The result is an information environment that gradually becomes more favourable to enhanced interests while appearing to result from natural market forces and democratic choices. Unenhanced individuals consume media that subtly prepares them for a future dominated by enhanced leadership, while discouraging them from seeking information that might help them understand or resist that future. Educational systems complete the circle by producing generations of students who lack the knowledge, critical thinking skills, or cultural frameworks necessary to recognize genetic manipulation or resist superhuman influence. Enhanced educators design curricula that emphasize cooperation, acceptance of authority, and adaptation to change while de-emphasizing independent thinking, historical analysis, or scientific skepticism that might threaten the awakening process. Students graduate with excellent technical skills and impressive knowledge bases, but they lack the intellectual tools necessary to question the fundamental assumptions of their society or recognize when they're being manipulated by individuals with superhuman capabilities. They enter adult life perfectly prepared to function in a world controlled by enhanced individuals while remaining completely unprepared to maintain their independence or resist genetic modification. The educational conditioning proves so effective that even unenhanced adults who remember a time before the awakening began often find themselves unable to articulate their concerns about the changes they observe. They sense that something important has been lost but lack the vocabulary or conceptual framework to describe what they're missing. Their children, raised in the modified educational environment, view their parents' concerns as nostalgia for an inferior past rather than legitimate warnings about a dangerous future. As the final awakening approaches its culmination, the pace of change accelerates beyond the capacity of unenhanced individuals to track or comprehend. Enhanced networks implement modifications to social, economic, and political systems simultaneously, creating cascading transformations that seem to emerge from natural evolution rather than coordinated manipulation. The changes benefit enhanced populations while gradually marginalizing unenhanced ones, but the process occurs so smoothly that resistance never has time to organize or develop effective strategies. The genetic consciousness has learned from the mistakes of the original Gupta period, avoiding the dramatic social divisions and open conflicts that led to the ancient empire's collapse. Instead of ruling through obvious superiority and intimidation, modern enhanced individuals govern through influence and persuasion that makes unenhanced populations willing participants in their own subjugation. The transition feels like progress rather than conquest, making resistance seem irrational or destructive rather than necessary for survival. But beneath the surface of this smooth transformation lies a reality that would terrify unenhanced populations if they possessed the cognitive capacity to understand it. The enhanced individuals managing the awakening process don't view unenhanced humans as equals deserving protection and consideration. They see them as a preliminary stage in human evolution, a necessary foundation that served its purpose in nurturing enhanced development, but now requires management rather than partnership. The collective imperative's long-term plans don't include meaningful roles for unenhanced populations in the future civilization it's creating. The genetic consciousness views normal human limitations as obstacles to optimal social organization, sources of inefficiency and instability that must be eliminated or controlled to achieve its vision of perfect order. Unenhanced individuals will be permitted to exist, but only in carefully managed roles that serve enhanced interests while preventing them from interfering with superior decision-making processes. This biological colonialism represents the ultimate expression of genetic supremacy, creating a permanent caste system based on DNA modifications rather than social or economic factors. Enhanced individuals will govern, create, and explore while unenhanced humans provide labor, resources, and entertainment for their genetic superiors. The arrangement will be justified as natural order, evolutionary necessity, and optimal resource allocation, rather than exploitation or oppression. But the most chilling aspect of this future is that unenhanced populations will likely accept their subordinate status willingly, having been conditioned through decades of influence operations to view enhanced authority as legitimate and beneficial. They'll celebrate their genetic superiors' achievements, support policies that favor enhanced interests, and raise their children to aspire to genetic modification as the highest form of human development. The awakening that began as the reactivation of dormant genetic modifications has evolved into the systematic transformation of human civilization itself. The superhuman race created by ancient India's genetic experiments isn't just returning to power, it's completing a conquest that spans millennia, creating a future where humanity as we know it becomes obsolete. And as the final phase accelerates toward its inevitable conclusion, only one question remains. Will the last generation of unenhanced humans recognize what's happening in time to preserve some fragment of their genetic heritage? Or will they surrender completely to the golden age that promises prosperity for enhanced individuals while offering servitude for everyone else? The transformation is nearly complete. The genetic consciousness stirs from its ancient slumber, stretching across quantum networks that span the globe. Soon, very soon, the age of unenhanced humanity will end, and the golden empire that began in the laboratories of ancient India will claim its inheritance, not just of Earth, but of the stars themselves. The future belongs to those whose DNA carries the right modifications. For everyone else, it's time to accept their place in a world they're no longer equipped to understand or control. The superhuman race has awakened, and their patience with inferior genetics is finally at an end.